Let's try again. Hi, I've got audio. There we go. I accidentally punched the mute button. So, hello, welcome back to our 50k AMA. I'm glad someone told me like right away rather than an hour later. But hi, yeah, you can hear my nice raspy voice. It is morning, Sunday morning. And this, for a teacher, this is agonizing. Like, you don't expect to be up this early in the morning on a Sunday, for crying out loud. But hello, welcome. The audio does work and turned off now. Excellent. Welcome to the stream. As I was just miming before, this is a special Q&A. So normally I would do a monthly archery Q&A. This is a special dedicated Q&A for an Ask Me Anything because we've reached the 50,000 milestone. That happened actually about 2 weeks ago, where we were trending on we were trending on YouTube, and it's on everybody's recommended list now. It's funny because like just a few days ago, I was just I was buying food from a food truck, and one of the guys who was serving me said, "Hey, I know you. I saw you on YouTube." So it's happening. I'm becoming a thing. Totally unexpected, but it was really cool to see that people are, like more and more people are being exposed to what I do. One of the problems with archery is that it is kind of hard to get more people interested. Like a lot of the archery content, which I'll mention later on, is directed towards people who already do archery or just getting into archery. It doesn't really bring archery to the mainstream. So by having like 1 million people watch this video on Olympic archery and a very particular form of Olympic archery, it's really brought the mainstream in. So we will be reaching our silver play button very soon. So hello to our regular viewers. I see quite a few common names there, and hello to our new viewers as well. And yeah, it's 58,000 already. It's really jumped up, and it'd be really interesting to reach that 100k mark. I know I'm not an archery only channel, but it'd be nice to see an archery channel reach that mark. Apart from Lars Anderson, I'm sure someone will ask questions about him very shortly, so I'll save that for a different time. But for now, we'll go through what we intend to do. I do apologize for my background. I normally tilt the camera angle a bit more this way, but it is daytime at the moment, and the backlighting is quite bad, so I've angled the camera just a bit this way. The background is a little busy, but you should be okay with this. It's actually a very interesting room, this one. It's a very big study/library. We collect a lot of books here, and there's a lot of stuff we can possibly go through. So what I'm going to do, I've got around 10 or 15 questions already lined up. Most of these are archery questions. This isn't Ask Me Anything, an AMA. So for those who know how AMA works, this is primarily done on Reddit, but the idea is the same everywhere. So I'll take questions about basically anything. If it's something I can't answer, I'm not going to really bother too much, but if it's something esoteric or out of left field, then it's something which I'll be probably happy to have a go at, whether it's a personal question or a professional question about my job or anything about my philosophy or any tips or whatever. That sort of thing I'll happily answer. So the first segment I'll go through, I've got some pre-prepared questions. And for those who want to ask questions, jump in the chat, tag my name at NUSensei or hashtag NUSensei. I'll put the live feed in front of me. I'm going to go through my prepared segment first, as usual, and then I'll go through questions later. So if you have a question you want to get answered right now, then I would recommend you wait for the next 10 minutes, and then I'll go through those questions. Otherwise, I'll scroll through and get through the first few things. For those just joining us, I do apologize for the lack of audio. I had my microphone button, mute button turned on, and that was solved right away. Okay, so let's go through our prepared questions. Yeah, like I said, I've got around like 15 or so questions, which we'll go through. Most of these are fairly quick questions, but some of these are very interesting because this is our special AMA, and we're giving more people time to come in and ask questions. I'm going to give some of these questions some extended responses to give you more time to do so. The first question comes from Nick. I think Nick's a new subscriber, new follower. And the question he was asking is, what's a silver play button? That's a good question. I think anyone who's on YouTube knows what a silver play button is. But for those who don't know how it works, YouTube creators have access to different ranks. Now, it used to be just a silver player button plus extras. They've expanded it to include more things. When you can find out on the creator help page on YouTube. I actually can't remember what it was, but basically the lower levels, there's like opal and there's something other than opal and there's bronze. It basically gives you access to more and more tools. Oh, I won't say tools, but more and more support things, creator community things. Originally, like the main thing with YouTube is that you needed a certain number of subscribers to even like get a partnership, to get like ad revenue. Now it's a lot easier to do so, but instead you get more incentives, and I think like 10,000 is bronze, and that gives you access to YouTube creator spaces around the world. There's none around where I am, so it doesn't matter for me, but for a lot of people, they can access a studio which they can use. Now the next milestone is 100,000 subscribers, and when you reach that, you get access to more spaces throughout the year, which again doesn't apply to me, but what you do get is a plaque. You become eligible to order a silver play button, which is a plaque on a frame, and you can have your name put on it, and people hang it up on their like creator space to show that you have a very large community. So 100,000 subscribers is significant. That's a huge number, and a lot of people kind of wish they had many subscribers. It's funny because like I work in a school, right? And the thing with young people these days is how many followers you have. Whether it's on, it's mostly Instagram. So people always have this, thing about Instagram or Snapchat or YouTube is something a bit more specific. Like you have to create videos, and most kids want to do like Let's Plays or Minecraft videos. So getting lots of subscribers is tough. Like for anyone who has made YouTube videos, like getting like the first 10 subscribers is tough. Like getting the first 50 or 100 is really tough. Getting to 100,000 is like a dream. So that was the idea. I didn't plan to get the silver player button. Like that wasn't something I was realistically aiming for. The last time I checked before the huge spike, that was going to happen like 2021 or something. So instead, the projection will be in mid-February next year, because we're growing that quickly now. But right now, you're here watching at 58,000. In around 3 months' time, it'll be 100,000. That's what the projection will be. Assuming I don't go viral again, so who knows what will happen, right? I mean, every time Lars Anderson makes a video, I get like more and more viewers because people watch that stuff. So who knows what will happen. So, that's the first thing. I mean, the next step after 100,000 is 1 million, which gives you a gold button, and then there's like PewDiePie level or something, that's like 10 million and plus. So, that's not my goal, but getting one plaque would be kind of like the goal. Like for a small, like low budget, like zero budget channel, what I do, that's kind of like the dream goal there. It wasn't intentional, but now that's within grasp, that's what we are aiming for. Now, the second question is also a general question from Assad. How did you come up with the name, NUSensei? There are lots of projections about this. Someone's harassing me on Steam. Hang on. Sorry about this. So there are a lot of questions about, theories about my name. I've mentioned this quite a few times before. Where does the NUSensei come from? The letters NU are actually my generated initials at work. So every teacher at my school has a particular code for the timetable. So when you get a subject, you get a letter combination which shows which teacher you have. And my initials when I started working were NU from my last name. There were quite a few people with the same last name as me. There was NG, NU, NY, NN. So I became NU. That was the order I got it. Now, since then, they've added a 3-letter system. So I'm now NUD, but my initial initials were NU, hence the new part of my name. Sensei is Japanese for teacher, and I'm a teacher, which makes a lot of sense. NUSensei, basically new teacher. I originally wanted to call my channel Mr. New, just to kind of use that teacher theme a bit more, but MR knew it was already taken, so I went with, it took me like a long time to make a name. It's like anyone who plays like RPGs, there are two things which take ages. One is coming out with your costume, so which color scheme you want for your character, and the other thing is coming up with a name. So yeah, the name was really hard. I had all these ideas to make a channel, but I couldn't think of a name. So NUSensei was the thing. It's something which I thought was unique enough. It captured elements of my character and my persona, but it also is something which, you know, if you search it, you won't be confused with many other things. So that was something which could stand out. And that was the idea. So that's a good question aside. That's the history of my name. There's no meaning behind the word new. It was actually, like I said, my original work initials, which it's not a particularly epic source, but you know, that's the sort of thing it is. It's not meant to be a grandiose claim to fame. It's simply part of who I am. So the next question is a very good question for archery. Now, all the next few questions are archery questions. Like I said, for an AMA, you can ask me anything, but I'll go to the archery questions here. So, what are some tips that a beginner should do for tuning? This is again, all these questions are good. Beginners often have a misconception about tuning. Tuning is different from setup. When you buy your first bow, you should set it up a certain way. The basic things are make sure the limb is correctly aligned, make sure that your arrow is correctly configured for its center shot. Depending on your bow, if you're using an Olympic bow, then you need to tweak your plunger or your rest so the arrow points a certain way, like just off center. And the other thing is to make sure you have a knocking point and have the knocking point set in the correct place. Now, if you buy something straight out of the box, then practically everything is already done for you, especially if you buy from a pro shop, but don't make sure it's done for you. But if you buy online, the bow's basically going to be okay. I mean, most of the beginner bows, there are really no configurations you can possibly do, so it is as it is. So if you're buying a more advanced bow, like the Olympic style bows, then you will need to make sure that these things are in place. And I think the only thing that you really need to set up is basically stick on the arrow rest, put the limbs together, make sure the string has a knocking point, and you're basically ready to go. Tuning is something you shouldn't worry about until after you get past your beginner phase, because tuning involves things like brace height. It involves getting the right spine for your bow. Your initial arrows might be too stiff, so it's about like fine tuning and making sure everything works for you. The first step is setting up, is making sure everything just works. So I actually wouldn't worry about tuning. Not until you get to the point where you have consistent form, then you might want to do tuning then. But I don't recommend you tune as a beginner. It's nice to learn about, but I think it can distract you from the fundamentals of archery, which is form. No matter what bow you shoot, form is your first priority. And of course, apart from form, enjoyment is your first priority. Don't worry too much about tune, because that's not something you should try to do initially. Some people love tinkering around and playing with the bow, but it's not something you need to worry about that early. Okay, I might have a break halfway through to answer some other questions, but go through the rest of our questions here first. Question from Barry. What are your best tips for aiming? And I'm assuming for a beginner, this is bare bow. Sights, use the sight. But for a beginner, my tip for a beginner would be, I mean, there aren't any easy hacks for archery. You're asking like, how do I shoot really accurately as a beginner? There's no easy way to do it. A lot of it's just practice and getting the right sight picture and becoming consistent. But there are so many things between how you see the target and what you do. The trap with beginners is they focus too hard on trying to aim for a specific spot on the target. The problem is that knowing what you are aiming at and getting it there are two different things. So my first advice for beginners who are aiming would be, don't worry about aiming. Just point the bow at the target, do your shot, and then you will adjust the next shot. If you go too low, then aim a little higher. Too far to the left, too far to the right, then the next shot, you'll compensate. That's not going to be a problem. My general tips would be, to remember that you will always be aiming higher than what you actually are, because for those who are anchoring here or down here, you have a larger gap between your anchor point and the eye, which means that you're always angling upwards. So if you're trying to aim exactly at the middle, then drop the bow much lower than you think you would, and then you'll probably start hitting goals and you're thinking, wow, that's a miracle. No, it's just perception. It just looks like you're aiming high, you're not. So aim lower than you think you would. And apart from that, really it's just about just make sure you keep doing the same thing over and over again. And I find most people will naturally start gravitating towards the middle, especially after the first couple of sessions where your form begins to consolidate, it gets consistent, and aiming becomes subconscious. So that's kind of what you want to do. That's the idea with instinctive archery. It should be natural, and when you're shooting at close range distances, then that's going to be what you will acquire naturally. And I'm a very big fan of instinctive to teach. It's not the most reliable way to teach, but it's something which people will stress less about. Now, once you start doing competitive shooting, you might have more specialized things like string walking or face walking, or you might start using sights, but aiming isn't something you should really think about. Just shoot the bow and adjust from there. That's my main tip for aiming. Ido Ken, why the hiatus from Olympic recurve shooting? For those who have watched a lot of my videos from the last couple of months, I've mentioned a lot about being on break from Olympic recurve. The reason why, I think most of you know this by now, the reason why is because of the club suspension. I've got like 5 videos on this. Long story short, because of a safety compromise with the field, the council suspended the club operations on the field, and we had to have this 5-month drawn-out battle with the council. Not really a battle, but more of a process, which should have been done years ago, but despite our urging, the council did not act on this. So they only acted once something critical happened, and because of that, we had to go through this process, and it was probably the peak of my career as an archer, and specifically as an archery club president. I've not resigned, but I've stepped down since. I haven't run a game. I've let someone else take over and do the rest of the work. But I kept the club running. I kept it open. And now we can shoot properly now. So I'm looking forward to going back to doing more shooting. But that was a very long break where, the thing with archery is that you have to keep on doing it. If you take a day off or a week off, you start taking 2 weeks off, you don't turn up anymore, and you lose a lot of the progress you made. People who shoot once a week will barely sustain their level of archery, let alone progress. And people who shoot less than once a week will not progress. That's actually a fact, which is something which I don't want to tell people you've got to turn up every single day or every single week. But the reality is that you have to shoot as regularly as possible. Otherwise, you'd lose it. This is especially for recurve, because recurve is very sensitive. Compound, you can pick up and shoot again with a reasonable level of proficiency, despite not being a regular shooter. But for a recurve, you've got to maintain your physical conditioning, you've got to maintain your mental discipline, and all these things are very fine. It's hard to explain unless you actually shoot. When you pick up a recurve bow and you head to the range and you shoot competition, things like exactly how it should feel, the mental triggers, the mental reminders that you put for yourself, those things are very hard to remember if you don't do it all the time. And every time I go back and out there and shoot, I relearn something, basically. It's like the last tournament I did, which was the club championship a couple of weeks ago. I was trying to remind myself how to draw the bow. You might think, oh yeah, whoops, don't click that. That should be that easy, right? But it's all the mini steps in the way. It's like, all right, I'm here now, but I can't push up the clicker. So how can I remind myself to have a smooth process? So what I did was, all right, just close my eyes and just do nothing but draw the bow, and it has to feel a certain way in the shoulders, and then look at the target, and then align the string, and then expand, and then click. And all these micro steps require so much intensive focus that if you don't do it, you forget. So the same with really fine things like how to play piano. Like when you don't do it, you lose that finesse. You can still play that. You might remember the song or the piece, but you don't remember the physical finesse required to play it really well. So you're just banging keys and it sounds really barbaric, but you need to have that practice. And that was kind of my problem there. So having a long break because we were mandated by the council forced me out of it. It was a good thing because it gave me a mental break from archery, but it also pushed me to the verge of mental breakdown because of handling the legal issues. But that was a pain in the arse, I will say. It was something which again they justified it ridiculous, saying that this is a process you have to follow, and now we're following it, and I don't disagree, but it was only done after a critical incident. I'm not going to have that bureaucratic BS thrown at me. That could have been done. The fact that it's then done now on record with a high profile case is a good thing, but it tainted the club. You know, the club, we can say that we had a very clean record, but because a critical incident happened, and it happened because of negligence from the council, that's something which unfortunately is on the record against us. But we stood our ground, and we have all the proof to show that we had followed the right steps up to that point. Okay, back to the questions. Jeremy asked, a few years ago I did a video on archery annoyances covering the Samick Sage, and I was over-recommended the Samick Sage syndrome. Since then, there's been a lot of cheaper bows in the market. Are there any other brands or models you would recommend today? And the main thing that's come up from this question is so it's meant to be like really extreme weather for thunderstorms. I'm just checking for rain. We've dodged most of the rain here, but there might be still some drizzle in the background. So the main kind of bow that has appeared in the time since are the Chinese bows. A lot of these bows were really cheap plastic or fiberglass bows, and they just weren't that good. But since then, you've got bows like the Junsing bows, which are more well known under the Mandarin Duck brand. And you have Jandao bows, you have Toe Point, which has been trying to harass me to market more stuff. And honestly, having shot the really cheap bows like the Toe Point R2 and the Mandarin Duck Phantom, which is a lot of people are interested in getting, they're actually not bad. If you just want a bow, then something like the Mandarin Duck Phantom is not a bad idea. I wouldn't really call it a beginner bow. It's a bow. A beginner can use it, but it's a bow. A lot of these Chinese companies are like lowering production costs by a lot, so you can get decent bows for under $100. Are they good? I wouldn't say they're good, but they're good enough. I would add like some of the Chinese brands to the list. Things like the Toe Point bows, the Jandao bows, and the Junsing bows, otherwise known as Mandarin Duck, for those who are rebranded. They're actually pretty decent for what you're paying for. Like, especially for what you're paying for, they are really, really good. Next question. I'm going through my list. I'll scroll through the chat a bit later. Courtney asked 2 questions. The first question is, if the serving's becoming warm around the loops, is there anything that can be done, or does the string need to be replaced? It is possible to repair the serving on the loops. It is a bit of a pain because you have to basically get someone with a string jig to remove the serving completely, then redo it. It can be done, but it's very hard to do. That said, I mean, it's not uncommon for it to happen. The serving and the string tends to fray more on the end loops because of the contact with the limb. Because the string doesn't really contact anywhere else. You won't see a string snap along the string length, because that's not where the contact's being made. Unless you damage the string, it shouldn't snap halfway. Instead, what happened is the abrasion at the limb tips would cause the most damage, and especially if your limb tip has sharp edges. Do be mindful of that. Some limbs do have sharp edges, which you have to sand down to give it a smooth edge so it doesn't cut into your string serving. I've had a string snap on me at full draw, and it's funny because like the string itself, when the end loop is worn out, the string only comes apart after you release. So I shot a perfect gold, and the string came off. and that was the end of my session. So that was it. So you can have stopgap measures. For some of our club bows, we just put like tape over the end, and that's temporary until you get a new string. But if the end loops start wearing out, get a new string. There's not much you can do about that. The second question is, when you move up in draw weight, do you need to get a new string? No, you don't. Certain draw weights might shoot better with a heavier string. So if you go from like 30 pound to 40 pound, then you might start thinking about getting an 18 strand string. But otherwise, like a 16 strand string for a fast flight material is pretty standard for basically every bow. You only get different strings if you're doing tuning and you know you need a heavier string. Otherwise, you don't need to change string for a new draw weight. The only other change you might need to make is if you're getting different length limbs, then you definitely need a longer string or shorter string. Alright. I've got 4 more questions on my list. I'm going to go through the chat questions. Blitz 40th. Do you have any tips on warming up and stretching to avoid injury? There's a lot of contention about warming up. Things like you shouldn't like actively warm up, like going because that will actually cause more strain to your muscles. The only thing I probably advise is like be warmed up. So like your body temperature should actually be warmed up. If you go from a cold start, you might cramp up a bit more. And have a stretching band. But apart from that, you don't have to go through a lot of stretches, which push your body beyond its capacity. And there's a lot of contention about that. But you don't need to warm up that much. Just don't start from a complete cold start and shoot a heavy bow right away. Try to get your alignment right with your stretching band. That should be enough for most shooting. Okay. Next question comes from Dell. Why is there so little information and discussion on freestyle recurve? There are a lot of traditional and compound and hunting discussions on and channels and forums, but very little on recurve or freestyle recurve or target shooting. That's a very good question because I mean there are a lot of people who do the Olympic style of archery, but not many people talk about it. And I honestly don't get why. I guess in some ways it is the most niche of niche sports. So archery itself is quite niche as it is, as a sport. And then you have an Olympic discipline which not many people know about. And the parallel to this is the International Shooting Sports Federation. So you have people who shoot rifles or shotguns, yes, but you don't have many people who practice the sports style with the air rifles and the pistols and so on. You see it on the Olympic Games, but that's the only exposure you have. And because of that, archery has a low profile in most countries around the world. Even in countries like Korea, where you have the best archery team, archery is not the most well-known sport compared to like soccer or baseball. So it's really hard to find information for things which aren't mainstream. You have things like fishing, which are easy to come across. You have things like swimming. There are so many other niche interests which have a far bigger following. I don't have a reason why this is the case. When I started doing YouTube, I do a part of drinking, so I'm running low of saliva here. Oh, this probably doesn't help, but hey, it's something. All right. The thing with when I started doing these videos, like I came across the same problem. It's why I started making archery videos. This wasn't much information out there for an Olympic style shooter, because I was the sort of person who, like, I first learned something, I want to learn everything else. I want to learn all the tricks and the tips and the small things. And I just didn't find the things I need to find, so I started making these things. And part of the problem is that, like, a lot of people who have the knowledge don't have the means to share the knowledge. There might be club coaches, there might be instructors, but they're just sort of localized. So you don't see people who have the time, the patience, the effort, the technical know-how to create content for an open market, and the ones who could possibly do it want to charge a premium for it, because there is a business in coaching and selling content like books and CDs. I don't think Archery has picked up YouTube that openly. When I started looking at archery videos on YouTube, there was Performance Archery TV, and that was a series of seminar videos which I started with. And apart from that, all you had was Grey Archer. You had Grizzly Jim via the Merlin Archery site, and before that, his original Archery Adventures channel, which will be relaunching soon. And you had Jeff Kavanagh, and back then, like, I remember Jeff Kavanagh had like 4,000 subscribers. Not sure what he has right now, but yeah, Merlin Archery, Jeff Kavanagh, they had like 4,000. Now, like Jeff and Jim have like 14,000. Grey Archer has gone off the radar. So the trad seems to be really low. You have there's like Jimmy Blackmon as well. He makes videos, and there are several others. But like even now, like there very few of them are actively making videos. These days, you might follow people like Greg Richards from Archery 101 and 3D Archery, Joe McLean from Traditional Archery. It's Catholic Cat Traditional Archery. And I don't know, it's just really hard to come across people who are passionate enough to make content regularly. You have a lot of people who are doing things like, I use HEMA as a good example as what the community could be. With HEMA, or Historical European Martial Arts, or just plain history, you have a lot of big names which people gravitate towards. Scarlegrim and Thane Thran and Metatron and Shadowversity. And you have these personalities which make content, and sometimes they work together, sometimes they disagree, but you have very strong followings for something which is in itself a niche thing. Like HEMA is a niche, but it has a much more popular following, partly because for years it's been well supported by the real world community as well as the online community. Archery has very little support in the real world community and even less support on the online community. So for that reason, it was, it's hard to get traction for anyone making content online. There's very, very little support. That's why most things you find online are traditional and compound hunting, because that's what people mostly do with bows these days. Either you do it to hunt, therefore you're a compound shooter, or you do it as a recreational historical reenactment thing, and that's why traditional is very strong. Olympic recurve is the niche of niches. It's the it's just because it's a small part of the archery population, and I've mentioned before, it tends to be pissed on the most because it's the most bizarre and the most advanced. It's just hard to find things. So even now, after I've made like a few hundred videos, I'm like 1,000 now for in general, not just archery, but like even now, like it's people don't really make a lot of videos. There are channels like Short Archery. There are a few others who started off but didn't really continue on. It's just like the commitment to make videos, quality content with the right pitch and the right pace. That requires a set of multi-dimensional skills. And for someone to be able to create content, front the camera, demonstrate, teach it cleanly, edit the video, it's a long process. And considering the average skill level of someone is using an iPhone to film or Google Pixel to film, then there's not much you can really do. That's my kind of reasoning why that would be the case. But yeah, it's just really hard to find people who want to share it. People hate cameras. Like, it's funny because like I was filming an ad for my school, and it was like people were so afraid of the camera, not just as kids, but the teachers were very like don't film me sort of thing. I've been in front of the camera for a long time, so I'm used to handling the camera, both from the behind the camera and in front of the camera. But for other people, most people find it very petrifying to front the camera. Same with public speaking. It's something which a lot of people don't want to do and can't do. You have to be very well trained to have that nerve to do so. And you combine that with the fact that now you're pitching something to anonymous people online, then that doesn't surprise me to see people not make videos. So, Joe's next question. Got three more, and then we'll go to the casual chat questions. Joe, are there any silly laws in Australia that limit or prevent enjoyment or of recreational or competitive archery to its fullest? I've had a lot of funny comments about Australian laws because the main thing I keep hearing is that Australia banned guns and therefore Australia's a very lame country. You have no freedoms. I don't feel that way, honestly. I'm not like anti-gun necessarily, but like I don't feel like my freedom and my liberties are being threatened because I have no guns. The funny thing is, despite us being a very conservative country, we actually have no strict archery laws. The only thing about archery is it comes down to crossbows, and crossbows are considered to be controlled weapons here, depending on your state. But apart from that, archery has no restrictions. There's in fact no law specifically about owning a bow or even using in public. There are kind of like similar collateral laws, like things like being a public nuisance or endangering life. Those things might be used against you, but archery actually has nothing which restricts you. It's mostly the hunting laws. And you can't shoot like native animals. Like that's a dick move as it is. Like shooting your cats or shooting your kangaroos. That's like unless you're like actually hunting them and culling them in specified areas, that's fine. But shooting like wallabies down the local creek is not on. But yeah, there's actually nothing that really restricts you. I think we've got very because it is a niche sport and there's been no issue with people using bows. There's actually not much of a big thing about using bows in public. Not in public, but doing archery. I guess the only thing which restricts you is where you can do so. If you live in a city, then you need to be in a place with a club, and there are lots of clubs. But where you live might be very few, and it might be very far away. But yeah, there's no. There aren't any laws which you have to do silly things. I mean, things like things like with like guns, for example, you need to prove that you're doing it for a sporting purpose. Same with swords, you have to prove that you're part of an organization, that you have a license to use it, or you have permission to use one, or a reason to use it, and you need to prove that you do it regularly. So if you own a sword, you need to be a member of a fencing club or a sword fighting club, and then you have to prove that you use it safely and store correctly. That's quite complicated, and it's kind of like the one of the ball breaker laws is that like if you own a firearm and you are registered and you're doing it for sport shooting, then technically the police can search your house to make sure that it's properly secured, and that's something they can do arbitrarily. And a lot of people don't like that for obvious reasons, so some people don't bother with it. Archery has no such laws. Now again, the only laws of archery is, as Byron Cook mentioned in chat before, it's just public safety, and that's just general common sense. It's surprisingly, you can enjoy archery quite well in Australia. There aren't any laws around it until someone F's it up. That's the only kicker. It's not a problem until someone shoots a cat with an eBay bow. That's when things get really nasty. Because some will say, oh, there's no legislation about bows, we should ban compound bows, or these high-powered killing machines, as the media and the police would call it. So that's just, I know, there's no law against it right now, and there shouldn't be until someone screws it up. And the last formal question is from Social Engineering, which you're watching right now. There you go. Sorry, it's the second last question. I'll answer your question now anyway. How come Olympic archery hasn't adopted drop-away rest? Most of you see this on compound bows. They're really hard to use. Blade rest and drop-away rest have a lot of sensitivity issues. Even compound shooters have trouble keeping arrows on the rest. I'm thinking more of blade rest here, but someone asked a similar question a while ago on my channel, and the reason is it's hard to use. Even on a windy day, a compound shooter has a lot of problems keeping the arrow on the rest. If you don't draw correctly, the wind blows it off, it comes off. And when you're shooting recurve, you're shooting with your fingers. And your fingers are terrible release devices. So I'm serious. Like our human bodies aren't very good at doing certain things, and trying to keep like a long object on a rest without flicking it off is hard enough as it is. So that is the reason why you don't see drop away rest and blade rest on recurve. It's just hard to use, and it doesn't really give you any benefit. And I know for the rest gives you more consistency because there's less contact with the arrow, and therefore it should be better. But you need to remember usability and practicality. It's kind of like, you wouldn't use an Olympic style rest or plunger button in a traditional shooter, a traditional archery or hunting, because it's too sensitive. You need something which is simpler in the field. That's why you have people shooting off the shelf, because there's less that can go wrong. Whereas when you have an Olympic setup, there are too many things there which don't work in the field. If you have to angle it differently, or you have to do a snapshot, this doesn't work as easily. And the last question for today is from Antonio. Or today, for this first segment, is from Antonio. How do you feel about foldable bows? I'm assuming by foldable bows, I mean the survival bows. A lot of them have to... they're practical. They're not particularly good bows. They can shoot, but they're not designed to be good, easy to use bows. That's why if you're going for a survival bow, you might want to get something like the Mandarin Duck Phantom, a very small, compact bow, which you can put together and shoot, and it performs like a real bow. The survival bows have multi-function uses. They're basically rugged, they're not going to break very easily, and you can fold them or store them in your backpack. Something which, with a bow like the Phantom, you need to take apart, which means there are small parts which you might drop and lose, which means that it's less practical for the field. The size is right. The foldable bows tend to be very heavy. They're like 50 pounds. You can't get lighter models. 50 pounds, it's a survival bow. They're 50-pound bows. They don't shoot particularly well. The shape isn't very good. The arrows, you need to get particular arrows for them, because the arrows they come with aren't really good for they're like way too stiff for the bow. But they can work fine. I mean, if you're trying to survive and hunt deer or something in the woods, then I'd imagine it would be okay to use these bows. I actually wouldn't mind trying one. There are some. I might contact one of the manufacturers and get one to try. But the other thing with folding bows is that they have other uses. Like I saw a review of someone doing the primal survival bow, where he was smashing things like a hammer with this bow, because it's a really heavy folding riser. You can use it like a hammer. You would not do that with a bow. But a metal bow which folds up, you can actually use for multiple things. So as bows to use at a range, they're terrible. But as bows that you have to use in the wild, if you have to do some prepping or survival stuff, then perhaps that might be interesting. Okay. Alright, that's the end of my formal list of questions. That's taken around 40 minutes, including my my mute mime the first 2 minutes. But that covers what I had to cover for this AMA. That's mostly archery Q&A, but as part of the 50k AMA, feel free to ask me anything. So as of this point, this is an open AMA. Ask me anything. I will react as best as I can to everything I can possibly look at. I will scroll up towards the other questions in chat, but if you have anything else you want to point out, then ask now. Tag my name so I can see the question, otherwise I might miss it. If I can't find it, because it's about 100 you right now, I might miss the initial question. So I'm going to have a little coffee break. Hang on. Keep asking questions. Whew, okay. Man, live streams are pretty intense. That's a lot of talking. And it's been like less than 6 hours since my last live stream, so I'm still exhausted from that. Alright. Mark Chambers, where's my home? I'm in Melbourne, Australia. People, one of the funniest things in my Olympic archery video is that so many people wondering where I'm from, what my accent is, and I mean most people figured out it's an Australian accent, and fair enough. I should fake my accent next time just to throw people off. Yeah, I'm Australian. I'm in Melbourne. David Simos from Bermuda again. Hello. How do you choose a bow as a gift? I don't. It's a bow is something which a lot of people in the community will say it's not something you should buy. bows are very personal. I wouldn't recommend a bow as a gift because it has to suit the person's like look and feel. I mean, buying a bow for a person is like buying a bicycle. They might like it, they might not like it. That's really tough. I wouldn't recommend you buy a bow unless you know exactly what they want to get, or they're an absolute beginner and you can buy any wooden bow. So if they're a beginner and they just want a bow, then buy something like a Samick Polaris, low draw at £20. But yeah, like I wouldn't. I have no method to buy a bow for someone because, generally speaking, I would try to make it as part of an experience. So it's better to give someone, say, a chance to go to an archery range to shoot, or have make a trip to an archery shop to buy it in person and let them try bows, rather than buy a bow for them, because it's a lot of it's look and feel. I don't really have a yeah, I really don't have a way to recommend buying a bow from someone. Zeus Dilu. I got interested in archery 3 weeks ago, and I wanted to know what was covered in the classes. And you had to pay $70 for 6 classes once a week. Is that $70 each class, or for the whole thing? I'm curious about that. If you're doing a structured, like, multi-week course, what's involved is you learn the shot cycle, so the processes in archery. If you first learn safety, so how to correctly hold the bow, range safety rules like no sky drawing, don't point the bow at somebody, only point the bow at a target, very similar to gun ranges. And you learn the correct grip, the correct stance, the correct alignment. So that's basically what you're doing. And depending on the nature of the course, you might find yourself using more advanced things. Like you might learn how to use a sight, for example, and you might learn to use compound. But it depends on what the course actually is. But it's mostly going to be you learn the basic fundamental skills of archery, which can apply to almost any form of archery. If you choose to do hunting later, the same thing applies. If you choose to do target compound, these skills will still transfer over. So the fundamentals of archery are the same everywhere. And you'll mostly be learning how to aim, either bare bow or with the sight, and then you're probably doing a qualification. So you'll be shooting at a set distance and trying to get a certain score. And the idea is it encourages you to have a continual training program rather than a one-off. One of the challenges of archery today is that many people see it as an activity, not as a sport or not as a commitment. So people who want to do like mini golf or people who play bowling often will just go for one day and try it out for the experience and for the fun and not for the commitment. So a lot of courses are being challenged because people just want to try it once. So you might have the one come and try session, but you also have an extended training program where people want to do more archery and learn more technical things. But that's what you'll probably come across in a 6-week course. Let's see. Mistral Nagato. Are beginner lessons a must to enter archery? You don't have to have beginner lessons. You can just pick up a bow and shoot. Beginner lessons are the most accessible way to start archery. You won't learn things from a course that you can't figure out yourself, or from watching my videos. Little plug there. But yeah, like beginner lessons aren't mandatory, but it gives you the best foundation to start, because you can get it's not as intuitive as it looks. A lot of people say archery is very intuitive, and some people have a natural flair for picking up the right things. They might have seen it somewhere and then figure out the most practical methods. But it's like if you have no exposure and no guidance, then you run the biggest risk of making a lot of fundamental mistakes. And you can see someone who hasn't learned archery at all. They've picked up a 50-pound bow they found in their dad's garage, and they're shooting absolutely terrible to the point where they're gonna hurt themselves sooner rather than later. So it's highly recommended, but not mandatory. It's not a must, but you should. Like, you really should. That's my answer. Okay. Search engineering made a question about a point about the silver play button. It can take forever to get. Yeah, depending on what you do. Like if you have a trending topic or a very popular mainstream topic, if I make something like Pokemon channel or Minecraft, and I should have an easier way to get more viewers. I'm doing niche stuff, so it'll take a lot longer to get a play button. And like I said, at my previous rate of growth, it would have been like 2021, which I wouldn't mind. That's like 4 years from now. That's okay. I'm patient enough. But now it's like 4 months away, so that's even cooler. What is your favorite longbow? I don't have a favorite longbow. I haven't shot any, and I don't have any, so I don't have a comment on longbows. Let's see. What else do we have here? I'm going through the questions, and most of these aren't for me, so I'm going to the actual questions now, and here we go. Earl Foster. Do you like spicy food, and have you ever tried any super hot peppers, such as the ghost pepper? No, I don't like spicy food. I like spices which add like aroma. So things like herbs and spices which add some complexity to a dish. I don't like pure spiciness, and that's not my thing. I don't like super hot things. It's not my idea. Like some people have this thing about eating the hottest possible spice. I don't care about that. I just want to have good food, and I'm more fond of say citrus and herb rather than spice. So you can call me a pussy for that. I don't mind, but I'd rather enjoy like the texture and the flavor rather than the spiciness. I don't mind a bit of spice. My dad hates spice, but I actually don't mind spice. But I don't like just overloading spice. So enough for it to have a kick, but not enough to like burn your insides. Mistral Nagato again. How do you know when the arrow is in the correct position with the plunger? There are two things to keep here in mind. One is the offset alignment. So if it's dead center, then that's wrong. It should be if for a right-handed shooter, it should be off slightly this way. For a left-handed shooter, it becomes off slightly that way. It's very slight. And tuning, like a bare shaft tune, will confirm how far off it is. The other thing to keep in mind is the tension of the plunger. It shouldn't be too stiff, but it shouldn't be too soft. A bit more on the stiffer side, because the point of the plunger is to keep the arrow away from the riser. If it's too soft, we'll just make contact and it'll smack on the way out. But a lot of it is tuning. So tuning will reveal what you need. But you only need to be slightly off center, like about half an inch or so. Not much. More questions, please. This is the AMA. I'm not gonna do this very often at all. Same with Nagato again. Is 1,000 arrows a week necessary? If you only go to the range 4 days a week, that's 1,000 arrows, nearly. Like you don't need 1,000 arrows a week. That is professional level progress. But if the point is you want to maintain a consistent arrow volume. If you only shoot once a week, you're shooting probably 50 arrows in that session. You're not shooting much at all. 50 to 100 arrows isn't much. That's not enough to acquire proficiency in your chosen discipline. So if it's more for shooting regularly than shooting 1,000 arrows. 1,000 is a target which you might set for yourself, but you have to be realistic. If you can only commit to a certain amount of time per week, then you're going to say, I'm going to shoot 500 per week or 300 per week. And that's a good goal, because having goals gives you progression. It motivates you to go, all right, I'm going to do this today. It's kind of like, people say, I'm going to lose weight. That's a very bad goal, because it's something which you don't fairly measure, and it's too vague for you to go with. Same for me as a teacher. I teach goal setting. Man, I have to, but like the thing which kind of makes me annoyed that people don't get this. Kids don't get this. I don't blame you kids. It's kind of like, my goal is to do more homework, or my goal is to study harder. Those aren't goals. Those are ideals. You can't make it happen because you can't measure it. What does it mean to study harder? It means, do you have more headaches? Do you read one more page? A goal has to be specific, it has to be measurable, it has to be timely, it has to be relevant. So rather than say, I'm going to do more archery, or I'm going to become a better archer, you need to say something like, I'm going to shoot 500 arrows per week. I'm going to aim for 250 points out of 300 for my next benchmark. These are more specific things, and they enable you to achieve bigger goals. So having a target arrow volume is better than saying I want to shoot more often. So it depends on how seriously you take archery. If you're only doing it for fun, then do it for fun. But if you want to advance in archery, then it takes serious training. And despite what most people will say about Olympic archery being too easy, it's not. And most of you watching are probably archers. You know that it is not easy to pick up even a fully kitted up, stabilized sight setup and shoot accurately. It takes dedication and training. That's why it's an Olympic sport. They make it look easy, but it doesn't mean it's easy. And no matter what style of archery you shoot, even if you shoot traditional, it's not easy. It's simple to use, but being consistent is super, super hard. And some people sometimes kid themselves by saying that, oh yeah, I'll be okay, and they don't practice. No matter what you do, if you don't practice, you're not going to do well. Okay, good question there from Nagata. Quite a few good questions there. All right, let's keep on going. I think I'm reaching the highlights now. Yeah, there we go. I'm missing a few questions, but we'll go. I'm gonna go through the highlights. So those who've tagged my name. Morton, do I not like the Rick and Morty clips? No, I actually don't. I didn't like the ones you linked. I got it, but no, I didn't find that funny. Peter Sharp, after so many years of archery, does it ever start to feel old or redundant? Do you ever feel like you're doing the same old thing just isn't worth it anymore and crave new ventures? No. I'm the sort of person, I'm an introvert. I'm a very big introvert for one. And one of the things that I love doing are things which are intrinsic, which are introspective. It's why I like drawing, I like playing piano, and archery suits the same sort of thing. So some people have that wanderlust where you want to try new things. So you might start archery and move on to something else. I know a lot of people like this. But a lot of people want to settle into one thing and do it well. And I'm that sort of person. So the answer is no, archery does not feel boring to me because I know I haven't reached my full potential. I know that I can explore more things internally and become like a more balanced person internally. And in a similar way, it's like I don't feel like I want to travel the world. Eventually, I would like to see different places and meet different people, but there are so many things here which I don't know. There are so many things about myself which I don't know. So rather than spend thousands to travel to Bali or go to Paris or go to Italy, I don't feel that wanderlust. I feel like I want to become a centered, focused and balanced person first, and then I'll go on my pilgrimage to other places. And I think archery is that kind of like embodiment of that personality, that attitude. All right. Question from Let's Play KH. Do you think it'd be okay for a metal riser like the Winners Forge Elite Alpha? It's a first bow ever. Yeah, of course. No, the Forge Elite, or the Forge Plus as it used to be called, the SF Forge Plus, or the Winners Forge Elite Alpha, that is a perfect first bow because it's a bow which you go into, and it's a bow which performs quite well. You can go from casual to competition with the same bow. Metal riser in general is not a bad idea. You don't need to buy a wooden bow as your first bow, especially in a club where the club already has wooden bows. But if you're not shooting in a club and you just want a bow, then go for it. Don't limit yourself. If you want to shoot this kind of bow and you want to shoot this kind of archery, go for it. Don't stop at just getting a wooden bow. If you don't want to shoot Olympic freestyle, then don't worry about it. But there's nothing wrong with getting a decent riser. I mean, it's mostly about income and budget. If you have the money, get it. If you don't, then you might start from a lower point. But it's definitely a good bow. That wasn't a question. Yes, Elavone. What do you think of Kyudo? The Japanese martial art of archery. Okay. There's a misconception here. Kyudo is not a martial art. I'm just making sure there's no like ninjas around here. Kyudo is an art. It's not so much a martial art. It's an art. People confuse Kyudo with basically what's called Kyujutsu. So the war style of archery practiced by the Japanese eons ago is different to the archery you see today. Now I have had the chance to try Kyudo. The university near where I live has a Kyudo club. It's a small club, but they opened up an open come and try session, and it was specially marketed towards Archery Australia. So we had a lot of Australian archers turn up and do it. And it was a really amazing experience. I mean, we didn't shoot the bow because in Kyudo you have to learn all the processes and the ceremony before you hold a bow. And you have to prove you can use the gomi yumi before you even like knock an arrow. So we didn't shoot at all because we have no training for that. But for what was basically a 2-hour introduction, we learned a lot. It was actually one of the most amazing experiences I've had. Not as an archer, but as a person. It was just like the amount of focus you have, the meaning of what you do. I mean, like one of the things which I loved about it was the way you walk. You have to like, wearing your tabi or your socks in this case. The way you slide your feet in a certain way across the ground, like you glide across. The way you have to angle your feet a certain way, you turn that way, and then you walk forward. And your eyes are always focused about like 3 feet in front of you. You're watching this one spot on the ground. It was so centered, and the way you entered the dojo. And the way you moved through and you knelt down and you held the bow a certain way, and everything had a meaning to it. And it was just like, to me, I mean, this is like years ago. I still speak about it very passionately despite never having shot a yumi. And again, shooting a yumi is not Kyudo. Using the tool isn't the same as doing the art. And Kyudo is truly an amazing art. Like, watching it is amazing, but doing it yourself and being taught how to go through the ritual is something which, for me, I think at the time it helped me center myself as a person. And if I wasn't already doing a form of archery which is competitive, I might have actually done Kyudo. The fact that we had a school here was quite amazing as it was. But that was Kyudo is amazing. It's like I think what Element said, the process is more important than the archery. That's actually absolutely true. I think it doesn't miss the point because it's not the martial art. It's not trying to hit the target. It's the internal feeling that it's the shot that matters, not the target. And like it's one of the things where you have to do it yourself. Like I felt really centered at peace. And we had a chance to be taught by Greg Stewart, who was an Australian master, I guess, of Kyudo. He competes in Japan, in Yabusame, which is kind of funny seeing an Australian in a bright red rising sun kimono riding a horse and winning championships in Japan. But he was like, you expect like a bold white guy to be quite crude and rough, but he was so soft. He was an amazing person. You can probably look him up. His name is Gregory Stewart. He's a master. Very I had the chance to work with him. He comes back every now and then to do seminars. But he's mostly based in Japan. He's an amazing person to work with. And Kyudo is just amazing to experience. Really had that. It's one that's really I didn't do it in Japan, but the one thing which I regret, it wasn't in Japan, it was here. But doing it properly and like not picking a bow up and using it, but actually being taught archery is a different experience to learning yourself. That's something which I'll say very fondly in general. Okay. Whew. Wow. Marek, how was your first elimination round ever? I haven't shot an elimination round before. I don't compete in a formal competition which involves a knockout. Even in Australia, there are pretty much no tournaments which are knockout. The exception would be, more recently, a couple of years ago, Australia introduced a national match play series, which is meant to encourage more archers to become familiar with the Olympic style or the World Archery style format. Because in World Archery, you shoot a 720 round as a ranking round, and then you have the knockout. So you're seeded. If you make the cutoff, then you're seeded, and then you play knockout. But in most archery tournaments in Australia, you follow the old format where it's high score wins. So I actually have not participated in a match play tournament, and it's only very recently that Australia has organised one. And even so, like not most people don't do it. You have to sign up and pay a fee and do it. It's not hard to get into. It's pretty open, but it's not something most people do. So I actually haven't done an elimination round before. Let's see. I'm kind of half through chat right now, but keep asking questions, guys. I mean, it's been an hour, but this is an AMA. Ask me anything. I'll last a bit more before I fall asleep, but we'll be okay. Let's see. Where was I? Scholar, have you seen the next level archery episodes? I haven't seen that yet, so I actually don't know what we're talking about. Deep Rest. How difficult was it for you to find a job as a high school teacher, a high school history teacher? Wasn't that hard actually. I mean, it's like here it's not as saturated. There are always schools which need more people. It's kind of about like how far you are willing to work and like cast your net. I was quite fortunate because one of my local schools was advertising, and I grabbed it. Like you had to be aggressive in going for jobs. You might get a chance, even though they might not be in the best position or your ideal school. But I got the phone call in the morning, the interview in the afternoon, and a job in the evening. That's on my birthday too. An interesting setup. But yeah, it wasn't hard to find a job, but it's very competitive. And if you're not on top of your game, then it's going to be quite hard. And I'll share a story. I was mentoring a student teacher he was the only person I have outright failed. As a mentor, you're meant to teach them new skills, and ultimately you're the judge on whether or not they are capable as a professional. And he was someone I said outright should not be a teacher. You come across these people sometimes, but I've heard them as rumors. Actually, having mentored one, it's just so sad. Because even if he had the skill to become a teacher, there was no value. And one of the things I told him was, you need life experience. Like, you can't do nothing in your life and come into a classroom and be a teacher, because you have no charisma, you have no appeal. The kids don't like you, they hate you. You have no personal hygiene. Like, you stink, quite literally. Not figuratively, but literally, you stink. And how can you possibly impress someone in the interview when, like, if the classroom is intensely overwhelming for you, then you shouldn't be a teacher, because the classroom is actually not the hardest part of the job. So there are lots of negatives. But then this year I had a student teacher who just got her job at my school, and we basically form a support crew to train her to become the best interviewer, because she's straight out of university, a very young lady, and I made sure she got the job as much as I could. Short of bribing my panel, I basically gave her all the tips and skills she needed to succeed in her interview. So she got it, and it was like, I'm like, in some ways I wasn't surprised, but it's kind of like that moment. You coach someone all the way to the end, and that was really good. But like, it's not hard to find a job. And she applied for a couple of different schools, but it's more about how you can be on top of your game when you get the chance. So getting shortlisted isn't that hard, but proving you are not just an average teacher is quite difficult, because if you had a mediocre course where you didn't teach many classes and you weren't that creative, then that's going to be a pain, because you can't prove what you haven't done. Whereas when you have a very rich experience, when you have a good mentor, you have good experience and good reflections and good lessons, then it becomes much easier to say that, look, I am your A star. I'm your star. I'm your A team. Like, pick me. And that's it's not hard. Like, the question was how hard is it? I didn't find it hard to find a job myself, but it is competitive. So that way. I'm gonna have a bit of a break for a moment, because I need a food break, plus I need a bathroom break. So there's more questions lined up. Feel free to keep on asking me questions, because again, this is the AMA. I'm happy to go for another half an hour, 1 hour, depending on what people talk about. So commercial break. Bing. I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. I'm hoping that the chat didn't freak out there. But yeah, I've noticed that people have been copying the questions from above because I said ask questions now. So I might have answered your question like ahead of time. But good, that's stuff. We're nearly done. So back to the questions. Tony Oik. And by the way, if you're interested in asking more teaching questions or more teaching videos, that's something I do want to cover. I'm not sure exactly what people want to know because I could do a teaching vlog, but that's like, people do it all the time, and I'm not sure if I'm that interesting to watch as a teacher. But there are so many professional issues which teachers don't have access to. I think the same problem which I had in being an Olympic recurve shooter, I think teachers have in terms of looking at resources and getting the right advice and the right structure. I've been watching a lot of videos from a channel called Lisa Study Guides, and she does like tips for Year 12 students. I'm interested in doing a teacher version of that because I've been teaching for nearly 10 years now. I know I look like 18 or something, but I'm teaching for 10 years, and some people get freaked out by that. But yeah, if you want to see more teaching content, just ask, and I'd be interested in doing more things with teaching. Okay, Tony Oik, what is the Archer's paradox? That was actually meant to be a video I was going to film yesterday or today. I'm busy right now with writing reports and stuff, but that's something I wanted to cover. The Archer's paradox is the phenomenon where to shoot at a target, the bow isn't pointed at the target. So the arrow is... the paradox itself is the arrow must be pointed away from the target, Let's try again. The arrow is pointed off to the side in order to go straight. That's the paradox. It's not the flex of the arrow. The flex is the reason why the paradox exists, but the flex itself is not the paradox. It's a big misconception. I will talk about that in a moment, or in a different video. So the paradox is to shoot straight, you aim off to the side. Because at full draw, it comes back in line, so you're aiming with the arrow. And the paradox is that, like normally you would expect like the bow, you have to shoot through the bow itself to hit the target. You're actually shooting around the bow to hit the target. So that's the paradox. It's quite technical to understand the actual definition, but it just means that you are not actually aiming with the bow. You're aiming with the arrow. It's not the flex. That the paradox is not the flex. And people say with the paradox, I've done it a couple of times, but the flex is not the paradox. The flex is why it happens. Mark Chambers. Oh, sorry, did I ask a question before? There was a question up here. Godspeed 508. What do you do when you have a bad day? I try not to have bad days. This might be an odd answer to you, right? But the issue with bad days will happen. But a lot of what I do is preventative, right? So what makes it a bad day? Now, I work in a school. A lot of things happen in a school with your students, with your colleagues sometimes, with admin, with work. And I find that some people get stressed out over really small things. And part of my maturing process has been to let go of certain things which would normally bother me. For example, if you have a kid in class who is just pissing you off, right? And you go to the office and you start ranting about this little, insert expletive here kid who is, doing a certain thing, and you can really frustrated. I'm like, for me, I don't like listening to it. I block it out. Like, to me, I don't want to have negatives because we're surrounded by negativity. And you as a person can become quite negative, especially in a school. So for me, what I find that annoy most teachers, I don't get bothered by. And because of that, a lot of kids don't bother with me. It's kind of like, oh, he doesn't care that much, so why should we piss him off? So a lot of it is preventative. Like, I avoid things which I know will give me a bad time. So I don't hang around the staff room and be exposed to gossip because I don't care. It's not my sort of thing. If I have issues with students, then I'll deal with that in a personable way. Not a personal way, but in a personable way. So I'll talk with the kids. I'll say, look, let's work with what happened here. So I prefer to make things non-issues. I address the cause when I can, and not let it ferment into something much bigger later on. And truly, I've only had what, three in my entire career, maybe 3 days, which I would say have been bad days. I've had hard days, but not bad days. So I don't find I need to do much to respond to a bad day. It's just like do what I normally do, and that is, play music, watch a movie, do sport, have that balance already there, so you don't go to the extremes of life where you go through long periods of hard work and stress and you break down, and then you have lots of fun and you go and party and just have relax. For me, it's more like, let's keep things relatively stable. The swing is a lot less. And for some anxiety, like you don't want large swing, you want a very small amount of swing. So yeah, I tend to do the same thing every day. That's why archery is very appealing to me. It's like the same thing every single time. And if I don't want to do that, then I do things like I sleep. Example, I basically go sleep, or watch YouTube videos, or do something just like this gentle and relaxing, and not go to extremes. I don't drink, by the way. For those who work here, I don't drink alcohol. That's another example of something which breaks my moderation. I don't feel it suits my lifestyle because it's just too easy to go to your wine bottle, especially as a teacher on a bad day. But that's basically how I deal with bad days. Is one, I try to avoid bad days, actively doing things which make me feel better during the day, and making sure I have plenty of downtime afterwards. It's good advice for people who are, one, introverted, and two, have anxiety or depression. Is give yourself plenty of downtime, because you need it, especially as a teacher who is introverted and has anxiety. That's actually a really bad combination to have, and I feel sorry for you if you have both of those things. But you learn to manage that. A lot of it's mitigating it, and not just like you're not helpless. You need to take control of things, and you do have control. But a lot of it is making active choices, and some people might question those choices, but who cares? It's your life. You do what you want to do. Okay, good question. Very good question there. So back to our other questions. Mark Chambers, what is your opinion on starting archery in grade schools? I'm going to make a distinction between starting archery at a young age and starting archery in a grade school. If someone let's say someone is 8 years old, wants to try archery, and a parent brings them to a club, that's fine. They're a bit young, but often they really enjoy archery because it's fun for them. You start them young, they'll be into it. That's completely fine. Doing archery in a school is much different. The problem is that a lot of people in school aren't interested. So you get people who don't like it or don't care, and it becomes very hard to manage. I've run archery in my school. I've run archery clinics with my school. And it's when you have a group of people who actually want to do it, then it's a very fun experience for everybody. The instructors love it, the kids love it. But when you kind of force archery onto a group who may or may not be interested, it actually becomes dangerous, because the kids need to be heavily supervised. They might not listen to you, they might do silly things, and archery is not a sport where you want to screw around. Like, you need to follow rules very strictly. And I've had really bad sessions where this wasn't worth it. They might pay us like hundreds, but it's not worth the stress. I'm a volunteer, so I don't get paid anyway. But the stress of having to run sessions with people who don't care, that kind of outweighs the benefits. You might get a few people who love the sport, but for the person running it, oh my goodness, that's different there. So starting from a grade school level is okay. It's actually not a bad thing, but doing it in a grade school, like as a class, is difficult. Very challenging to manage that sort of thing there. I'm being realistic as a teacher, not just as an archer or an archery instructor, but as a teacher, that's challenging. That's different. For those who do things like Boy Scouts, and you do archery at Scouts, that's different, because most people in Scouts want to be there. Not everyone, but most people want to do Scouts. Most people want to go outdoors and want to do these things. That's different. If you're looking at a group of people who don't universally want to do it, that's different. I've seen a lot of Archer's Paradox things. Yeah, just remember, Archer's Paradox is the arrow pointing in the wrong direction to hit the target. It's not the flex. Okay. Matt Gibson. I'm old as dirt. 35 to be exact. I'm not that old. Just recently got super into archery. Am I too old to get anywhere with Olympic recurve? No, of course not. Can you compete? Yes, you can. Look, there are people who shoot Olympic recurve at 70 years old. And I'm not saying like they're not like elite level, but they still shoot at a level which suits them. It depends on your goals. It will take years of training to reach a proficiency level, but it doesn't mean you can't get there. There are people in the Olympic Games who are 40 plus who compete. Now, you have a smaller time frame to work with, but thankfully archery is not a sport that demands youth and athleticism and fitness. You need to have a conditioning level, yes, but you're not gonna like compete like in a sprint against Usain Bolt. Like you don't have to be 20 years old. A lot of athletes at top level are young because they have more time. You might have a job, a full-time job or two, and a family, and that might slow you down. But there are lots of people who have families, who have full-time jobs, who compete at world level. I'm going to mention a random person here, Lou Redmond. She's a full-time worker with a family. She shoots compound for Australia at world level. So there's no reason why you can't compete at elite level and maintain your other commitments. The main thing is discipline. If you don't manage your time and discipline, then it's going to be hard for you to make any headway. But if you can do so, and one of the advantages of being an older person going to archery, you have more life experience. And having that balance and life experience often counts more than raw talent and skill. So I think that when you talk about 35, can you be an Olympian when starting at 35? Yes, and some people are. Some people make the Olympic Games after only 2 years of shooting because they're exceptionally hard workers. They shoot really well and they get to high level. And these people are usually like 22 or something, 25. But for like you can get 30 people in their 30s who've been archery for 2 or 3 years and then shoot world championships. It's possible. At 35, you can compete when you're 38 or 39 or 40. And again, as long as you maintain a lifestyle which enables you to practice regularly, then yes, your age shouldn't matter. And like I said, the main reason why you don't see older shooters often in the Olympic Games is because of time and money. When you're young, you've got a lot of things to throw away and waste, and people give you money to go. But when you're older, you're mostly just like funding yourself, man. Sure, you can do it, definitely. Ruby, as a person of Japanese descent, which I'm not Japanese, by the way, I'll leave that. I mean, people know what I am. I'll answer the question here. But I have tried Kyudo. I've already answered that question. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. Okay, let's go to our next batch of questions. GC asks, what subject do you teach? I'm an English teacher. I'm more qualified for English, but I'm a history teacher. I prefer teaching history. My current subjects are English, history, geography, and I'm doing Vietnamese next year. Very briefly as a bit of a trial thing. I've covered these questions already. Mark Chambers, what are the best distances for beginners? 10 meters. No more than that, really. 10 meters. And we normally give people a big face, like the big 120 centimeter face, because it's just so generous and fun to hit a big goal target. It's like stress free. But yeah, 10 meters is what we do for beginners. Any more than that, you might want to have a qualification process where you have to get a certain amount of points to qualify for the next distance. Otherwise, it becomes a frustration thing where people miss a target. And look, people do miss at 10 meters because they have no idea of where to aim. So 10 meters, both for fun and for safety. Let's see, what else? Oscar Kono, what spine should I use for 25-pound same sage? The charts are confusing and some do 25 recurves. Depends on your arrow. I don't really have a recommendation. I'll show what I use for 25 bow. They're talking about grab it here. Okay, so it's really easy. We have some of the same kind of bow as you. And I'm looking at my microphone. That's my camera there. I'm looking. What you have to do is find someone with a similar kind of bow. So I just bought these arrows for my 25-pound Samic Polaris. So same sort of thing here. I'm a small guy, so I'm 5'4". My draw length is around 25.5 inches. I'm a really small guy. My actual draw weight on a 25-pound bow is around 22 pounds. You don't lose that much for a low draw weight. So I'm around 23 pound. I use the Eastern Apollo 840 spine Eastern Apollo. So if you get something around 840 spine, you should be okay for 25-pound bow. This works for me completely fine. So that, I mean, this is not how you do arrow matching, but if you have someone who uses the right weight and has a similar draw length, this makes a lot more sense. So 840 is a good number to go for. Okay, back to the questions. Let's see. Matt Gibson already answered, but is 35 too old? Like I said before, no, it's not. Alright, answer your question there. I'm going through from the top of the list, so I'm reading the ones which haven't tagged me. If you've tagged me again, then even better. I can see your question even easier. Gokudera A0820 Hayato. I like to buy a compound bow, but just for backyard shooting, is it okay? That's fine. Compound bow for backyard is okay. Just make sure your backyard is properly set so you don't accidentally shoot through a fence or over a fence. If any bow you use, consider the space you use and then make sure it's safe. The bow you use doesn't matter, but compound's fine. It might be overkill. It's raining too. It might be overkill for you, but it's completely fine. I was planning on doing a video later on, but it's raining and plus got work to do, so not gonna worry too much. Let's see. J to John, ever done club archery? No, I haven't. I have shot like an. Oh no, I haven't done archery. I've seen club. I haven't shot before. No. Whew. Koga Labor. Do you think the Mandarin Duck Phantom is still good? Yeah, it's fine. And it's not the most beginner-friendly bow, but as a bow, it handles fine. I was shooting yesterday. Somebody wanted to know what it was like, so I brought it in, and they were shooting fine with it. I mean, I can hit targets with a Phantom. It feels okay. The grip's a little weird, but the bow's okay. Elvin Burgos. I'm having a little trouble with my grouping. I've got a few shots that are pretty consistent, but a few flyers. Okay, if your question is like the one arrow that doesn't seem to group, it could be anything. It could be your sight picture, it could be your release, it could be alignment. It's hard to diagnose, really. It's mostly about consistency. If you get like 5 out of 6 arrows in the same spot, for one does something different, then you have to reflect on what might be different. So you need, if you don't already do, have a step in your process where you reflect on the shot. Okay, I can't tell you why it happens because it could be anything. In fact, recently I saw a post on Reddit where someone posted a picture of a grouping, and the grouping was literally everywhere on the target. Like, there's no center of grouping. It was like an oval shape with like 20 arrows in every spot. There was no grouping, and they were asking, what do I need to fix? And the answer that was given was everything. It's not savage to say this, but literally, like, if you can't group, we can't give you feedback. It's just about, like, you need to be consistent with everything: stance, anchor, grip, release. If you're spraying, like, imagine the size of I don't know. Imagine you have a target where you have one arrow in every corner of the target. That's not consistent. We can't train you if you haven't. It's like closing your eyes and shooting, and we can group with our eyes closed. So if your grouping is that wide, that's problematic. You basically got to learn the basics of archery. But if you have 1 or 2 arrows which fly off in a certain way, and the rest group, then you're doing something right most of the time. And what you need to do is think about, well, what felt different about those shots? So think about that. The Wicked Man. That's right. The Wicked Man. I'm planning on posting other games on War Thunder. I want to finish and retire War Thunder, but guess what? There are French tanks now, and I'm a completionist. I started a project where I want to catalog every tank in the game. I'm like 90% done. I'm actually covered so many vehicles. I know most people cover gameplay and all that and tips. I can cover tips, but I don't want to. I want to retire, but it's French tank, so time. I do have other series on my channel which I casually do, but I don't have time to really cover them because I feel like I can make an archery tutorial and teach like 10,000 people a new skill, or I can do a gameplay video. And I find that I don't want to be a streamer where I play a game every. I mean, I'm sure people want to watch it, but I'm not that interested in doing it. I want to make teaching material, whether it's game tutorials or art tutorials or teaching tutorials or tutorials. I'm not really interested in playing a game, but I've got like several series. I've got like Cook Serve Delicious 2, which I started but never played again. Good game, but I just don't have time to play. I've just finished AC Origins, and I actually am planning a new series called Archery Analysis, where I look at the way games and movies portray archery. I've been recording footage from Assassin's Creed Origins because that game has one of the best archery experiences. I don't care about realism, it's just the fact that you can use archery for so many different things. I played most of the game purely using archery. I normally play using like assassinations and combat, but archery was so smooth in Origins that I mean, I've been planning this like the idea for a long time. I want to cover things like Total War, Age of Empires, Tomb Raider, Far Cry, but since Origins is the current in-game, the trending game, I want to start with that. So I want to make kind of archery spotlights for video games and movies perhaps, and talk more about that. Not from a nitpicking point of view, but from a curiosity point of view, because a lot of things which you see in the game are plausible. But you know, people will ask, well, how does it work in real life, if it works in real life? So I'll be exploring that in the next few weeks or months. Zeus Delu, have you split an arrow, and how did you react when you broke your window? I have split an arrow like many times. It's more of an annoyance. It's like for someone who does archery the first time, it's like, wow, I'm a Robin Hood, but really, it's really frustrating. You actively avoid doing so, mostly by shooting different targets. But it's really annoying. Like you get really frustrated because you just blew another arrow. Joe Franklin, before that, Mark Chambers, quality shooting arrows versus quantity, both. You need both, quantity and quality. There's no point shooting lots of arrows which are crap. So if you have a target like 1,000 arrows a week, but you shoot like crap, then you're reinforcing bad habits. You need to have quality. And I think when you reach the point where you break down, stop shooting. You don't want to keep on reinforcing bad things. So I do recommend, you need both, but don't sacrifice quality for quantity. Joe Franklin, can arrows be reused at all? They're fine. Arrows can be used indefinitely until they break. If you hit something solid like a stump or a log or a rock or target frame and your arrow is bent, then that's pretty much useless. Carbon will normally split. That's useless as well. Eventually, arrows will break, but you can reuse an arrow for months, if not years. So you're fine about that. Let's see. Scarlet, how much do you teach beginners on the first day? Enough to get them shooting, because like you do have a process, but you teach them the basic steps. Like you teach them how to stand, how to hold the bow, how to release the arrow, and that's basically it. From there, you go by ear. So depending on what the individual needs, you might show them different things. So if someone's having trouble having an anchor, you show them how to anchor correctly. If someone is picking up really quickly and have really good form and they want to learn how to aim, then you show them how to aim. So I don't teach them that much. The first day, it's about having fun and doing it safely. Beyond that, anyone who wants to learn more, and I actually want to do a series of videos where I show you what you should be focusing on your first day. The most important thing is basically remember how to anchor and basically let go of the bow, the string. So I don't do that much teaching the first day. It's more about the first experience, getting it feeling right, and then having fun for the rest of the day. Earl Foster, have I ever played Dungeons and Dragons or similar games, and what sort of class? I actually haven't played Dungeons and Dragons before. I'm familiar with the system and how it works, but I haven't played it myself. For most RPGs or video games, more so, I am actually more for if I'm playing solo. I generally, this might surprise you, but I generally prefer a warrior class when I'm playing solo RPGs. When I'm playing in a team cooperative RPG, I prefer playing the support character or the healer. My main example is Guild Wars. I love the first Guild Wars. I played Monk, and playing Monk in random battles is intense as heck. Because one, you can't win 10 in a row without a Monk. You can, it's really hard. And the Monk makes it happen. It's not fun to play because nobody plays Monk. But playing Monk and trying to proc and catch all the spike damages, it was actually really challenging. I had a lot of fun playing Monk, but not in a co-op campaign, but in a competitive environment. Sure. I don't actually play Archer a lot because archers in most RPGs are quite passive. It's very hard to play Archer in RPGs because once you get in close range, you basically have no tank, so you need to fight. So I prefer playing the rods need the most. So tank is probably easy for solo, and Archer is actually don't play much Archer. I'm not as interested, funny enough. Samuel, I'm a compound shooter, having lots of issues with my release. Any recommendations on what to correct it? For a compound shooter, I have trouble release. I don't know what it actually is. Depends on what the problem is. If you're punching the trigger, then relax. If you're anticipating too much, then relax. Just relax. A lot of it just let it happen. It should surprise you. I mean, that's the general advice for anyone having trouble release is just relax. But yeah, you can be more specific by filming yourself, and people can say, oh, you're punching, or you're holding the wrong way, and so on. But most problems with release is kind of punching the trigger. So all I can say is relax. Or find a coach. Yeah. Power 21, have you ever wanted a crossbow? No. Never interested in crossbow. Bows are fun as it is. I'm not interested in crossbows. I have no historical interest in crossbows. I mean, studying it's cool, but I don't want to own one. And plus, it's the one thing here you can't own. Apart from guns, crossbows. You can get them legally, but you need a license and so on. It's like a firearm thing. So I'm not going to bother with crossbows. Okay. The dude. Kogalaba. I'm playing Final Fantasy 14. I have a bard. It's really fun, but I have a question. Do you ever burst into song to help increase accuracy or critical hit? That's good. I love the question. Of course, no. But speaking of Final Fantasy, my favorite Final Fantasy is Final Fantasy 6. Most people love 7 as a best game. 7 is iconic because you have a universe and a set of characters which are memorable. That's why you have all these Final Fantasy 7 offshoots and remakes and so on. But for me, I love Final Fantasy 6. I grew up playing Final Fantasy 6. That to me is even more memorable. The music, the characters, the setting, and for Super Nintendo at the time, it was just really amazing experience. It was Chrono Trigger and Final Fantasy VI, some of the two best games on the system, two best RPGs made by Squaresoft at the time, the best soundtracks. I even today, I enjoy modern gaming, but that was memorable. I mean, I like to play music from Chrono Trigger and Final Fantasy VI. That's how memorable it is. Not as remakes, but my goodness, those were the games at the time. So good. Oops, let's close that. Wolfjard Z, what do different fletchings do with the flight of the arrow? Mostly affect the way it spins. Some fletchings will make it spin more than others, and things like drag. So the shape of the fletchings will affect the drag. Larger fletchings have more drag, and therefore they could correct faster in flight, but they also slow down faster. So that's why you see different designs of fletchings. That's a general answer, I know. ZRB, BG, what language do you know? I speak Vietnamese and English fluently. I do know some Japanese, and I do pick up other words every now and then. I can understand some German, some Italian, some French, but I speak Japanese, some Japanese, Vietnamese, and English. Those are my languages. Let's play KH. I already answered the question. Yeah. So I see Marek's question about elimination rounds. I've answered the question several times already, so I'm just going through top to bottom here. Ruby, would you be confident in using a bow for home defense? I actually have been planning. I've actually scripted a video about bows in home defense. In my opinion, okay, I'm gonna separate the question to two things. Will I use a bow in home defense? No. Bows in general are terrible home defense weapons. You need to have the bow set up, you need to have the arrow already knocked, you need to be proficient enough to shoot in your home. And look, I live in a typical suburban home. If you're living in an open field or ranch, that's different when you have an open like kill zone. But in a house, a bow is too impractical. I feel more comfortable using a wooden baton in hand to hand rather than using a bow. It just doesn't work in a house. The other problem with a bow is that legally you have to justify self-defense. A bow is not a defensive weapon. In order to use the bow, you need to have the freedom to use it, and that means you are not under threat. Remember, we're in Australia here, not the US, where you say, oh, I had a gun, alright? If somebody's breaking in and they don't have a gun, then I really have no legal justification to use a bow. Okay, I might threaten someone and might look really scared to see an Asian guy with a bow pointing at you. That's pretty cool too. But if I let go and shoot somebody, then I had control of the situation. It's very hard for me to justify using a bow in self-defense in a court of law. So I wouldn't be confident because I probably would not be legally protected. Because there are people who have used bows for self-defense here, but the people that shot have already left the premises. Like they climbed the fence, they've been shot in the arse. I mean, I think somebody used a Samic Sage and somewhere in a different state, and they shot a home invader in the bum with an arrow. And of course the intruder never reported it to the doctors because the police are trying to find someone with an arrow wound. Yeah, it's mostly going to be no. I wouldn't use it because it's not practical, and you open yourself up to a lot of the other legal issues. If the question is, do I feel confident in using a bow to save my life? Yeah. I'd say so. And remember, I do shoot trad as well. I can shoot barebird trad and shoot an arrow towards a person. So I'm not that snob where I could only use a bow for sport. People who use archery can do it for different things, and I'm pretty confident that I can use a bow if I had to as a weapon. But in a home defense situation, that's not the first choice I would use. All right. What was I drinking? It's coffee. It's an iced coffee with no ice in it because it's kind of cool already. This is a Nescafe Blend 21 iced coffee syrup with milk, obviously. Actually, I probably should have put ice. It's summer here, but it's not hot right now because we're going through a thunderstorm. But it tastes pretty lukewarm, actually. Yeah. Okay. Woo. All right. Well, I'll be up to. Arnis, welcome back from Latvia. How is the YouTube adpocalypse going for you? Any difficulties? Holy crap, the adpocalypse sucks, man. That's, I mean, the first wave, the first apocalypse didn't hit me that hard. I actually saw an increase because at the same time there was a lot more interest in archery. So it didn't hit me hard. But the current one, the whole demonetization is pissing me off. It hasn't hit me hard because most of my things get resolved pretty quickly, but it's a pain because you don't understand why you get demonetized. So, like, you know, like some of my videos, like the thing is that you have, it's the potential income, right? So for me, I can get around 1,000 views in the first 24 hours, and that won't get me much. But if I make a really popular video, and especially now that I've got a 1 million view video trending, and I make, let's say I make a different topic about you know, if can you use bows upside down or something, then that might get like 10,000 views or 20,000 views in the first 48 hours. But none of that will be monetized because YouTube blocks it for whatever reason. So it hasn't hit me hard, but it's more of the anxiety of, is this going to be blocked by YouTube? And that's just frustrating. It's not exactly crippling, but it's more about what the hell is YouTube doing? Because if you understand the algorithm, then you can work around that. But the thing is, sorry, that was my coffee there. The thing is that the reason why it annoys me is that I don't know why it's there. I know why you have these advertisers concerned, but the majority of creators aren't trying to spread, leftist propaganda. Like, we're trying to make good content, but the bot is doing a really poor job of reading what these things are. In my opinion, once, if something is likely to be triggered by the bot, that should be a manual review first, and you whitelist things rather than you just outright block a video or block the ads, because that affects income. For me, this isn't my income. If I don't get money from YouTube, it's not going to affect me that much, because I'm a full-time teacher, and that probably won't change unless my income drastically increases, where I might consider doing part-time or something. But it's not going to affect me. If I don't get paid, then I'll still make videos. The money isn't the incentive. It's more about the content being out there. Alternatives, there's Vimeo. I do have a Vimeo account, but I don't see a need to migrate. I'm not going to be based on YouTube and make money. I'm not going to open a Patreon to ask for money, because this channel is self-sustaining. I'm not going to ask you to give me money to make content. I think that's, for me, I'm in a position where I've got a stable job and a stable income, and I don't want to ask you for money, because that's being greedy, that's being selfish. So that's not the point here. So if the adpocalypse gets worse and I lose my content, which it's unlikely that will happen, then I'll still make content. If I don't get paid for it, then that's okay too. Because for me, it's more about the completionist sort of thing around than the financial thing. But seeing the money go up is nice too. Like, it's kind of like when you play a game and you get like income, like money from like killing monsters. It feels good when you have income. But I already have income. Okay. Phoenix Sus BF. Have you seen the latest Lars Anderson video, episode 4, about how easy it is? What do you think about it? I just saw it before. It's clickbait. I don't say this in a bad way, but that's actually one of the most clickbait titles possibly made, because it says learn archery easy. There's a thumbnail with like learn easy, but he tells the video has nothing about how to learn archery or how to learn these shots easy. It's just showing two women that he teaches and them jumping around shooting at very close targets. It's not hard. I mean, he's right, by the way. He's not wrong. It's not hard to learn these things. All you have to do is learn to use a bow, and hopping around it's in my opinion, it's actually pointless, because it's not a trick shot. I mean, they eventually do like upside down things and the shoot moving targets, but that's not really trick shooting. Like jumping and shooting isn't really a trick. I can do it like literally right now. I can showcase that next time I'm in the clubhouse. Like, hopping and shooting a bow isn't hard. Whether you shoot outside or inside doesn't matter. So it's actually hard. In my opinion, it's a pointless video, because it is easy to learn these things, and no one's denying that. But at the same time, he doesn't explain how it's done. So it's a clickbait video. I think all it does is reinforces how good he is, or how good he looks. Again, I don't assume any bad intent by Lars. I think he has every right to do so. But it's kind of like appealing to the masses. But this is really easy, and I'm waiting for the elitist archers to make videos saying how wrong it is. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to make a video on how wrong he is, because he's not wrong. But that to me, I think from a creator point of view, not from an archer point of view, but from a creator point of view, I felt that was a very pointless video. If this is monetized, it's a bit of a money grab, I think, because you're gonna get like 500,000 views, 100,000, a million views, thinking that it's gonna be really easy. They'll show you, because people want to learn this stuff. They want Lars to make content to teach them how to do these things, how to shoot, how to do trick shots, but he doesn't make these things. He might explain it in a comment, like this is what you do, but it doesn't teach you. So making a video where he says how easy it is, I think that's disingenuous. That I think is a grab for attention, and not an actual helpful video. People want to see helpful. They want to see instructional stuff. I mean, Maltese Archery does this at the moment, but Lars is not doing that. He's just showcasing. And when he showcases his own skills, they're good. I liked his episode 3 when he's just basically casually lying down and shooting arrows out of the air. That's pretty badass, right? Like, he's putting himself in danger, but he feels confident and he can do it. That's actually pretty cool. But when you make it like a learn it really easy, and you just show people shooting a frisbee at 2 meters, I don't find it to be a particularly good video. So it's nice to see content, but I don't think it's actually a good video because you're waiting for that. I mean, for what I liked hearing from himself, like the narrators is getting interesting, but to hear Lars himself speak was actually really good. So, we've seen him speak before. He's a very well-spoken person for someone who's Danish and doesn't speak English as a first language. But I thought the video itself was not a good video. Didn't enjoy it as much. Everything else is really cool, but that I think is just not particularly good video. It's clickbait, so I don't like about that. Top 50. How do you remove an archery from the target? Use 2 hands. Most people either place the hand on the target, grab it by the shaft as close as possible to the target, and yank it out, or they use 2 hands and then yank it. Oh, hang on, I've got an arrow here. Why am I using an imaginary prop? Yeah, I got an arrow, okay? So let's say the target's here. If it's stuck in there, then you basically, you push the target back, you grab the shaft, and then you yank it out like that. If it's too hard, use 2 hands. So close to the target, 2 hands, pull it out. Make sure there's no one behind you, of course. A safety thing is make sure you always approach your target from the side, because otherwise that will happen. But 2 hands, yank it out. If you can't get a good grip, then get an arrow puller, which is the rubber grip. You can just clamp it on and pull it, or get a high friction material. The latex bands, which you can use for stretching, are very high friction. They can work for gripping as well. So that's what you do. That's the correct way. A lot of people grab from the end and pull it out like that. That's wrong. You shouldn't do that. You might bend and snap the arrow. So grab it as close as you can to the target and pull it out that way. Okay, ooh, good question there. That was kind of random. The human sensation. You've said you should avoid cheap bows. How do you feel about DIY bows like PVC? They're fine. I mean, I love the PVC things. Just the DIY aspect rather than the shooting aspect. They're fine. They're not going to give you a great archery experience, but they'll give you a good DIY experience. And they're completely fine to get started in archery. And some people make really good ones, but it's not that easy to do. They're alright. Finesse Fog Razor Laser. What is a good bow weight for a 13-year-old? Probably 25 pound, 20 to 25. We normally start 13-year-olds on 15 to 20, but if you're buying a bow, then 20 to 25 is a good point. Morton, do you think hunters and archery should be separated from the sports side? I'm not sure if you remember that question. They are separated. In fact, there's very little crossover for hunting and sport. They're different things. I think what the more important thing is people who talk about archery should themselves be very clear on what they're talking about. A lot of the conflict and confusion and misconception comes from non-archers who are basically talking about archery in general. They're way too generalized. They talk about how this archery is impractical or this wasn't used in war. Archery was used, it's one of the few things that's been around since the dawn of mankind. And when you think about archery, used as hunting, well, that's historical archery. War archery is historical archery. I mean, and trick shooting is historical archery. So people need to become more clear on how you can separate archery and different things. Just because I swing my bow around in sport doesn't mean it's a stupid, impractical thing. It's one form of archery. So I think they're already separated, but that's something which, as a commentator, the more you understand about archery, the easier it is to comprehend why people do certain things. Halzor, I've got a question. What's the correct finger position to get a clean release on the string? That's a really good question. Let's see what I have here. I have my bow trainer here. What a coincidence. Okay. The exact placement will vary between different people. There is no one correct way. But what you're aiming for is basically this. I'll try to get a good angle there, right? So you want it kind of like not you want this kind of look, but it depends on what your preference is. So this is kind of what most people would do. So I don't have an arrow knocked here, but you can imagine where the arrow will be, or kind of right there. So that's kind of what it looks like when you knock the string. Most of the weight will be on your middle finger. So this is what I normally do. The pad of the index finger, the first joint of the middle finger, and depending on your preference, your ring finger will either have 10% of the weight, so it might be very loose, or you might have 20 to 30%. There is no one correct way of doing this. There are different methods. Some people prefer like a 30, 40, no, it would make sense. It would be kind of like more like a 30, 30, 40, 30, or you might have a 40, 50, 10 percentage distribution on these fingers. There's no one correct way. Clean release is more of a technique rather than finger placement. Captain Fruitbat Gaming. Do you think it is necessary? Do you think a 30-pound bow would be powerful enough for bow fishing? Yes, yeah. 30 pounds should be okay for bow fishing. Finesse Frog Razor Laser again. Is it necessary to use arrow fletchings to recurve? Yes. You need fletchings of an arrow. All of them. You can shoot bare shaft, but the point of the fletchings is the correct flight. If you shoot without fletchings, then it's gonna fly like a stick. Good luck with that. Gokudera 0820 Hayato. Do you think a teenager can pull the strings of a compound bow? Yes. Depends on the weight of the compound bow. Like, it's not like, can a person pull a bow back? The question should be, can a person pull a bow back of this weight? A compound bow can be in between 20 pounds to 70 pounds. So it depends on the bow. But if it's a light compound, sure, why not? Game of Veto. I've made a mistake. Why am I watching this? Because you're interested. Because you want to find out new things. You want to learn something new every day. That's why you're watching this. Where else am I? Just gonna try and catch up the chat here. Accidentally skipped down too much. Oh, there we go. Honest, how many, what's that question? Mini games and movies portray shooting arrows and bolts with rope attached to them. Is this plausible in any way? Oh yeah, like kind of of shooting an arrow. Yeah, of course. Bow fishing. Ironically, we're talking about bow fishing, right? So yeah, of course you can shoot an arrow with some kind of cord attached. And it actually shouldn't affect the arrow that much. As long as it's pulling more weight behind the arrow, so you're not going to shoot as far. And the trajectory will be quite different, but there's no reason why you can't shoot an arrow with a cord attached to it. It wouldn't be as good as using a grappling hook, because that obviously is no way to hook something, but you can. I think it's plausible. Pretty sure you can try it yourself. Put some string to your arrow and do it, but not particularly effective for many things, but you can. The Last of Us is... I didn't realize that. Last of Us is a good game. The Last of Us is a good game. I didn't say that. That's an archery. Yes, it does have archery. I'll try that. Haven't kissed a man. No, I haven't kissed a man. Alright, where else was I come down to... This is good. It's been 2 hours, but hey, ask me anything. I'm going to go for a few more minutes. Let's have a look here. Earl Foster game. As a teacher, do you like teaching younger kids or older? I'm a high school teacher, so, but then again, high school covers from 12, 13 to 17, 18. Both. I think a teacher should be balanced in teaching both things, because if you need to understand where people come from to teach them at a later stage. Even though older kids usually have more maturity, not always, but usually, I always want to teach a junior class, because it's a nice way to interact with young people and influence them the right way. You can't have something that is kind of cherry picked just to teach a perfect class at senior level. I like teaching both. Junior students, you can mold better into the way you think they should behave in the classroom. older students are already set in their ways. They are more independent. So they both have good and bad things. There's more dependency at younger level, but at the same time, you have more opportunity to teach them to become more independent. Whereas the older you get, the more independent they become, but the less responsible they are. So you can't make them accountable for what they think is something they already do. So I like both. I find teaching senior is, teaching juniors is more intensive in the classroom, but teaching seniors is more intensive outside the classroom because there's more accountability that you need, like following up exams and reports and improvement, because they're doing university next year. So you need to make sure they have the best possible result. Social engineering makes a point about the demonetization. So upload the video, keep it private until you're able to unblock it. That's not how it works, actually. This is one trick to work around it, but like it doesn't unblock unless you get 1,000 views in the past 7 days. Then they review it and then it becomes unblocked. You could make a video and then lock it and then it becomes unblocked. But things that, like, the point is you make videos on a schedule, right? And if I make like a news video, like something happened yesterday, I'm gonna report it. I want to get done sooner, not later. And if you make the video and then you keep it private, then people don't get the notification. So it's a workaround which can work, but it shouldn't need to be there. And like I said, I don't care about demonetization. It's more like YouTube's broken. You're doing something really wrong here. The point is we should be able to make content and be given the benefit of the doubt, because most people being affected by the demonetization, the adpocalypse, are not terrorists trying to recruit people. So it's just, I don't think it's a good idea. You can work around it, but that's just, it's not something you have to do, or you should do. All right. Cool. Hey, Trash, good stuff. I'm gonna check your channel sometime. So you've got a pretty big French YouTube channel. You're making a video about Hollywood archery. I'm gonna watch that as soon as I can. That'd be interesting to see. Can't use about upside down video. Yeah, I need to find out what to do. So that'd be interesting. NUSensei, Martin, what is your opinion on Gary Shine and the stuff he teaches? I don't know who he is. You might want to link a video to me. I don't know which exactly. I've heard the name, but I'm sorry, I don't know who he is. I don't watch a lot of other people. Or Joe Rogan. I don't know who they are. Unless you're talking about an actor, which I don't really know. Could I take Lars Anderson? I can take him out to dinner. That's what you're talking about. Don't know about that. All right. Whew. Where am I? Oh, Scholar. Hey. Yes. The current US system, the national system. It recommends the most tension on the index finger as the index finger connects to the back muscles. Interesting. Yeah. Archery technique changes all the time. So I said, what's the right way? I'll show you different ways. There's no one right way. When I mentioned the 40-50-10, that's from Kisik Lee's Total Archery. Now he's in charge of the national system now, so he changes a lot. So there's no one easy way to talk about things. To explain the correct method. There are ways which work and there are ways which aren't, which work better for some people more than others. Barry Taylor, I've answered your question already. So check the start of the stream. You were like the second thing I answered today. Let's see. I'm Philip 32. I'm trying to get into primal bow shooting. Any recommendations? I have none really, but ask somebody else. That'd be fun to do. Mike KRX. Do trick shot practitioners do well in tournaments and competition? No. Mostly no. Which trick shooters are we talking about here? Like we're talking about Byron Ferguson. I don't think he competes, but I'm pretty sure he does okay in field on 3D. But a lot of the trick shooters don't compete. They just do archery for fun. Lars doesn't compete, as far as I know. So there's no result to prove it. So most people who do trick shots aren't good in the actual competition. I'm saying this in general. There are some exceptions for sports like shooting or archery, but most trick shooters aren't necessarily good competitors in their own right. They might be okay, not going to be great. JT John, is a bow a weapon, and are they allowed on an airplane? No, I don't think you can bring a bow onto an airplane. You need to ship it to somebody. If you're traveling with the bow, if you are doing for competition and it's disassembled, then it should be okay. Especially if you can show that you are bringing it for a competition. Like if you have an ID card from an organization, that will make it a lot easier. It should be okay to kind of send through stuff by plane, but you can't carry like a assembled bow. But if you have it secured in a bow case and locked, then yeah, you're competing, say, in compound world championships. It should be okay. So that's how to do it. British outdoors. What is your goal in archery? I want to compete. Like, my original goal was to make the state team, and I know people who have made the state team started around the same time I did, but I haven't been shooting. So first, to get back on the range and shoot, compete, make a state team, make a national team, maybe something bigger. But my goal is to make it as far as I can. I know what it is, but I'll see what I can do. Now, inadvertently, what I've achieved so far is that I have become the biggest archery YouTube channel on YouTube. So that was not intended, but hey, you know, I'm always for collateral goals. I miss my main target, do something else impressive. That's cool too. But it'd be nice to it would be nice to compete and win medals or some sort. Earl Foster has a question. I've got an American flag over here. So I've got actually 3 flags in the background. I've got the South Vietnamese flag. I've got the Australian flag, which I believe, this one story. Damn, it's taped here. This Australian flag here is a plastic flag, and I recognize this from the 1996 Olympic Games. So I was in primary school then. So we in primary school, we were taken to the city where the Australian Olympic team was being given a ticker tape parade through the city, and I don't remember a single thing about this. I remember my teacher having a chant like "Aussie, Aussie, Aussie, oi, oi, oi." That was the chant back then, still is. Yeah, I remember that. Of course, all the Olympians were like, you know, having these. We were waving these 3 plastic flags, the Australian one, I mean, and the Olympians were like signing everything. And the one I picked up was signed by, I think his name was Daniel Kowalski. He was an Australian swimmer. At the time, you had Kyudo Perkins, who was the best swimmer in Australia, and Daniel Kowalski was like number 2. So I don't think this is the one that's autographed. I think that might be chucked away. But this flag, I believe, came from that parade in 1996. That American flag, it's not mine, it's my dad's. I'm not sure where it came from, so I have no story behind that one. But that flag, the Australian one, is from an Olympic parade. That's pretty cool, actually. Yeah, it's a good question. I didn't think I'd bring it up. Cody, Birdboy, how old am I? I'm Asian, so I'm between 18 and 45. Okay, so that's my age range. Let's say Cody J Gallagher. What is your opinion on equipment on bow hunting? Should I continue to keep it simple, should off the shelf, or at a sight? That's up to you. Don't feel that adding a sight or stabilizer or using compound is a crutch. Hunting has a purpose to it. If you value skill, then train skill. If you value practicality, then do things to make it easier. Don't feel you have to prove something to somebody else, alright? If you can bring home a deer with a compound bow, great, you've got venison for a month. But if you want to say, oh, I shot a deer with a recurve bow, with my eyes closed, left-handed, then who cares, right? Do what you want to do. I've reached the end. Oh, I've reached the end. Holy crap. Wow. Yeah, Skyline mentioned about the Kasich Lee thing. Yeah, he's recommended like 40, 50, 10 forever. Like every book is written, like Archery, Total Archery, and Inside the Archer, it's 40, 50, 10. And that's how I mean, if you see the way I shoot with my recurve bow, especially in my my more recent videos, you notice that my ring finger is actually not very strongly on. That's caused me problems because I often my grip's too loose. I lose control of the tab and it slips, so I don't expand properly. So what I'm trying to do now is to have more weight on my ring finger. So I might do more like a 40-50 or 40-40-20 or whatever. World Archery recently had a seminar with Kyudo, the Olympic gold medalist, and they showed his finger placement, which is like, It's like 30, what is it? It was 35, 35, 30, or 30, 35, 35. So there are so many different ways to do this. In fact, Physics in their recent finger tab release, the Physics Seika Carbon, they actually specified in their advertising that each Seika model, the 1, 2, and 3, is designed to suit certain finger placements. So if you prefer more of a top to finger heavy design, you use this model of finger tab. If you prefer more of a balanced thing, use this finger tab. And that's actually a really interesting breakdown. Like I said, there's no one correct way. Each individual will have their own preferences. You need to try and experiment. I've been using 40, 50, 10 for a long time. I find it doesn't work that well for me, especially when I'm tired, because I lose control. So I will probably switch to a more of a 40, 40, 40, 30. But who knows these things, all right? 40, 40, 30 doesn't make any sense. 40, 40, 20. All right, but yeah, that's the idea. Do professional archers use drugs to help out? Probably not. Like, archery doesn't require that much concentration. It's more a mental thing rather than a physical thing. You don't need that. Any new holes in my shed? I won't tell my client member. I punched the hole by accident. This is an interesting story because I tried thumb draw from the outside the bow, and what you don't realize is that it goes more to the right than you think. So whoops. Let's put it that way. And we've reached the end of the chat questions. I'm going to give people like another minute to ask questions. So I'm going to stretch. It's pretty. I'd say it's a nice day to shoot, but it's raining. It's a nice day to film, but it's probably a thunderstorm later. So I might just take it easy today. I've got work to finish off, but I want to make another video at some point. But yeah, hopefully to answer all the questions. I mean, most of these are archery questions, which makes sense. But again, with the AMA, ask me anything. We'll be around from now maybe 15 minutes, and that'll be a 2.5-hour stream, which is quite a big stream, to be fair. But hopefully you find it interesting. I'm not gonna do it all the time. By the way, I'm curious whether you want to continue doing archery Q&As. The questions have been a little dry recently, but the live streams are still pretty fun because you get all these really cool questions on the spot, and it's great to kind of get all these ideas, and people want to know immediately all these different like philosophies in archery. So if you want to do another Q&A, the next one will be the end of December. And that would be an archery Q&A, and I might have 100k like AMA again like in February or something at this rate. So who knows? It won't be that long to wait. But these are fun to do, and like I said, I'm interested in covering different topics at different points. Last question from Ruby: what is your favorite food? I'm gonna say Japanese curry rice is my favorite food, followed by miso soup. Honest favorite gaming genre? I used to love RTS. I haven't played a lot recently. More these days. I like playing games with a good plot, and most of it is to do with action and adventure. So something like Assassin's Creed or Batman, the current Shadow of War series. Those are just fun games. So I like that sort of thing. I don't really like open world games because a lot of open world games don't need to be open world. They're just there to make it look busy and kind of eat up your time. And some are fun, some not so much. But yeah, I like RTS, but I don't play a lot of it. I used to love RPGs. Nowadays, I don't really have a favorite genre. There are things I don't like playing, but I have no favorite genre per se. John Mason, can I describe the mechanics of a suppressor? A gun suppressor or a bow suppressor? I'm not sure what we're talking about there. I can for a gun. I'm not sure what we're talking about for a bow though. I talk about a gun, then the point of suppressor is that it gives you extra chambers for the hot air to disperse into the chamber so that it doesn't make as loud of a noise report. It doesn't silence the gun. It's not a silencer, it's a suppressor. It changes the sound signature of a firearm, but it doesn't make it silent, despite what movies and games show you. From what people describe, it's basically, it changes from a bang to like dropping a dictionary in the next room. You can still hear it. Very much a loud sound, but that's kind of not... I'm not sure what you're asking me there. If it's a gun, that's how it works. A bow suppressor, okay. A what? A bow suppressor? What do you mean? Like, I talk about the string silencers. Are you talking about the long rod stabilizers? And if you talk about stabilizers, basically it dampens vibration. So if you screw on like the dampeners, the rubber dampeners, it basically gives you a long rod, it absorbs vibration, then the rubber absorbs it better, it reduces noise through more through rubber material, which dampens the noise, the vibration, hence dampener. If we talk about string silencers, then basically you have like the puffy things on strings, which give you more surface area to absorb the vibration again. So you have all these microfibers or hairs, and each one will absorb the vibration. So again, all the things are about absorbing vibration, and hence you silence the bow. So the more you add these things like rubber dampeners or string silencers, the more quiet it becomes. Basically, that's how it works. Micah X again. Is it ever too late to do archery? No, it's never too late. I recommend you watch my archery struggles competition video. Someone asked me a similar question in email, or Robin Hood, his name was, funny enough. He asked me the same question, and I said, watch this video, because in the video, the runner-up for the competition was Bob. Bob is an ex-serviceman in Ireland, and he is like, what, 70 years old. And he lost his vision in one eye due to an incident during his service. So he's shooting with one eye. He's like 70 plus years old, and he's shooting with his non-dominant hand, and he's enjoying himself. And if an Irish ex-serviceman with one eye shooting left-handed can enjoy archery, you can. That's one of the most motivating things I've seen. Absolutely amazing. What is from Barry? What is the best advice for someone new to archery? Enjoy it first. Enjoy it. But if I was to give advice on how to become better in archery, don't worry about aiming. Get your form right. It's about consistency, not aim. Being consistent will allow you to be accurate. Aiming won't do that for you. Flippy32, asking some weird questions here. I'll take this one. Could you have made the shot that Oswald made with the bow? No, I probably cannot. That's a hard shot as it is. That's probably not possible for bow. Earl Foster, as an English teacher, what's your favorite book to have your students read versus which book do you dread having students work through? Okay, that's a good question. Very, very good question. One of my favorites when teaching a text would be Animal Farm by George Orwell, because we normally teach for year 9s or 10s. It's a heavily political book, but for someone in year 9 or year 10, it's a very good starting point for politics, because the analogies to the Soviet Union are so strong. If you teach it as a base level fairy story, as the story is intended, then there's a lot to learn about how like the characters in the story interact. You have like Napoleon, and you have all the characters in the story have personalities, and most kids at that age understand corruption. It's a nice way to see how people become two-faced and they lie to you. It's a nice life lesson. But if you're using it as a more advanced level, you teach the Soviet Union and history and communism, that's a great entry point. So I haven't taught Animal Farm for a long time, but Animal Farm is a really good text to teach, and I think that's something I haven't done for a while, but really good as well. Things I dread teaching. Most of our texts are like Australian short stories, Australian novels, so they're all pretty good to use. The one thing which was taught for a long time, which I didn't like teaching, was The Outsiders by S.E. Hinton. I didn't like it because it's very American, and it's kind of like 1960s to 80s. I feel it's outdated for someone who is an Asian Australian teaching to Asian Australians. I feel like I don't feel right teaching The Outsiders about American street gangs to my current crowd. So and the movie was terrible too. So I didn't really like teaching. I stopped teaching at my school. Another one I like teaching was Looking for Alibrandi because it covers mental health as well as multiculturalism. But the another text which I dread in some ways is To Kill a Mockingbird. It's a good piece. It's a classic story, definitely. To Kill a Mockingbird. It's been TED Talk for a long time. But the problem is that it depends on what level you take it. It can be too hard to access. So that's something which I found kind of tricky to teach. A great story, and the film was also very good too, for what it was worth. But yeah, I find that it's a little tough to teach. Good book, but tough to teach. Anything else here? That's a really good question. Yeah, English text. Yeah, no, I find I don't really have a favorite. We have good texts which are accessible, but my personal favorite would probably be Animal Farm. Really good. If you haven't read it, by the way, it's a good read. I mean, there's 1984, which is probably more of a classic one, and more people know 1984. But Animal Farm is a much shorter book. You're actually surprised how short Animal Farm is, but it's such a good book to read. In terms of it's a simple book, but it gets the point across much faster than 1984, and which as a teacher you want to have an easy book to teach. Okay. Chugly11, thank you for watching the channel and good to see you doing archery, buying your first bow. Fantastic. Cody, I should check out Mountain Blade Bannerlord. Yes. Okay. I go back with Mountain Blade for a long time. Like, I played the original Mountain Blade back when it was a 2-person team and it was a beta on a forum, and to buy the game you had to send your credit card details to some Turkish family. I played the original Mountain Blade, and then I played Warband, which is the updated version of the game. Really enjoyed the mods. I played Napoleonic Wars, which is really fun. I played the Lord of the Rings mod for Warband. It was really fun. I've actually done several videos with Warband on my channel, which is really obscure now, and no one knows about them, but that was really fun to play. My original impression of Bannerlord was that I didn't like the open worldness of Mountain Blade. I felt I needed more of a linear storyline. It was a bit too open, but that was the nature of the game back then. But for the gameplay, I mean, at the time, I didn't know that much about historical martial arts or warfare. All I know was about bows, and bows were freaking awesome in Mountain Blade. And that was one of the games which inspired me to do the series on archery analysis, because Mountain Blade actually covers archery really well in terms of and accuracy, historical accuracy. It was a really good game. But all the sword fighting techniques were great. You understand, at the time, it was directional combat was a new thing. But the things they did with the weapons were basically what you do in real life. So it stands out as a very good game. And my first impression of Bannerlord was it looks like the same, but I'm sure it's gonna be a beautiful game. I might not get into it as much, but that's something I definitely want to try. Really good. John Mason, the device above the sight on your bow is like a short counterbalance. Okay, so on my Win Rise, I've got a mini stabilizer with a mini dampen on top. It's more for weight, yeah. It adds more top weight to the bow. I do it mostly for looks rather than for function, admittedly, but it does help balance out the stabilizer on the bottom. So yeah, no, it is a counterbalance. Adds a bit more mass to the bow, but it adds a bit more dampening as well. There's no real function to it. Most people don't need one. I just do it because I have it. FH, what made me do archery? How did I start? I did archery because someone told me there was an archery club across the road from my workplace. I didn't believe him. There was. And that's my club. I was the president for the last 4 years, and now I'm just using it casually now. So it wasn't so much I was interested. It's more like it was there. I tried it. I liked it for the reasons I said earlier. I'm an intrinsic person. I like the internal perfectionism, and it suited me. It suited my lifestyle. I'm not a sporty person. I don't like athletics. I don't like team sports. So I stuck with it because it was something which suited my lifestyle. Yeah, John said, yeah, Mockingbird's a very American story. Yeah, I find teaching American text to be quite tough because my demographic, I have a lot of immigrants to Australia, and teaching American text is very difficult. I find it easier to teach an Australian text. Even that's kind of strange because a lot of Australian texts are based on indigenous experiences, and to me, it's like a borrowed culture. I find it hard to relate to these things. I try the best that I can. It's something I sincerely appreciate and I learn more about it every day. But yeah, teaching American text is difficult because you have to teach the American culture and society. So, for example, like one of the texts we teach now is The Crucible by Arthur Miller. And that is, Salem witch hunts, sort of thing, and it's not too bad because we teach that in the context of the Cold War, of McCarthyism. That's also American. It's just so hard to kind of bridge these multiple things. And the way I teach it is, today we have, of course, Islamophobia. People are really afraid of terrorism, and you get accused of being a Muslim and you're a terrorist. And there are parallels to modern times. That's why teaching these things is so important. You teach about McCarthyism and the witch hunts of Salem and McCarthyism, and then you go to Islamophobia. You make these connections. But like certain texts which are kind of isolated, things like West Side Story to a lesser extent, but like the Outsiders is used in a lot of school texts. I find it increasingly not relevant to the current generation of where I am right now. In the US, it might be different, but it's just hard to teach these things. The other thing is language. Like the language in Mockingbird is quite distinct, and a lot of people don't get it. Now, I also teach the film On the Waterfront by Elia Kazan, starring Marlon Brando, and that's a great film too. It's a film which has stood the test of time, very good film. The language is different, but still understandable for most people. You can figure out the meaning by inferring what the scene actually is. So you know where cheese eater is. You say, what does that mean? What is cheese? Rats. Or what do rats do? The rat people. Oh, I get it now. Makes sense. But yeah, I find like a lot of American things are kind of hard to teach to an immigrant-based demographic in Australia. Paul Baxter, are there any techniques to detect too much talk and improve it? Any techniques? That's a very good question. Are there any techniques? I don't think there's a technique. It's more of watching yourself. If you can film yourself shoot, you will identify things you can't normally see. The mirror helps too, if you have a mirror. But if you have an ability to film yourself or have someone record you, you will spot things. When I do form checks or demonstrations, I normally pick out things I don't realize I'm doing. One thing I do is canting. Talking, canting, I do it a lot. So I need a bow prop. Oh, here we go. Yeah, we have bows lying around randomly. It's kind of like really useful. For those who watch someone like Matt Easton, Scholar Gladiatoria, one of the funniest things is that he literally has like sabers everywhere. So if he needs a prop saber, there's like 20 behind him, and there's like 5 on the desk in front of him. And I'm kind of reaching the point. I've got like bows and arrows like everywhere. Like I don't plan this. I'm like, I need a prop. Oh, we got a bow here. There we go. So Sonic Bear Hunter. Okay, so one thing that you find when I film myself, and especially my early videos, I mean, I'm a proficient archer, but I'm not a particularly good one, so I still make mistakes, and I learn a lot from filming myself. And I do notice that in a lot of my older videos, I do this a lot. Like it's not a very big cant, but for an Olympic recurve, that's way too much. Like you want to have a perfectly straight bow, right? I notice a lot that I do this. So I've learned to counteract that. Now, speaking about talking, one thing I've done recently, which I learned from my last tournament, is I grip my bow slightly differently. Okay, so I tend to put my finger a bit high up here, and I put it down here. The reason why is if I hold it like this, I naturally do that. I can't stop that. So if I actually have a bit more pressure on the thumb here, and put my thing slightly, not above the shelf obviously, but here, I find I've got a bit more control, and you see a lot of the top level archers have a slightly higher grip there. So what I often show in my video on light bows, I grip the bow like this correctly, and when I shoot, I grip like this or like that. That's not the way I show people. So there's a gap between what I show, the correct method, and what I do. So I learn from my own videos, which is good. When you film yourself, you observe yourself, you learn. That's the best way to get feedback for your own technique. Is the way to do so when you're shooting. Probably not an easy way, apart from using like a alcohol level, which you can't do. But yeah, watching yourself shoot is by far the most useful thing. I'm running out of gas here. GC, what would you recommend in terms of equipment, bows, fletching shafts, except for outdoor bear but target practice? get cheap arrows. If outdoor bear bow is there's no different for any other form of archery. Like it's mostly budget. Get decent arrows. Get decent fletchings. There's no after recommendation. Just the most important thing for a bow is buy a bow that you want to use. Okay, if you buy, this is the problem I have with things like the the Mandarin Duck Phantom. It's an L cheaper bow. It works, but doesn't make it fun to use. Now I have a kid who came to me and said, "I want to buy the Mandarin Duck Phantom," so I gave him the bow. He liked it, and I went, "Okay, so I know the kind of bow you like. Cause do you like this bow? It's the Samick Sage or the Samick Polaris." And I went, "Yeah, I like this one better." And I went, "Okay, how about this one?" I showed him the Martin Phantom, the Martin Jaguar, and the Martin Saber, and the Martin Panther, and they look amazing. It's got this high, it's still an aluminium field bow, but it has this like the grips there, and like, it looks really amazing. He loved these, eyes lit up. So did his dad's like wallet. So it's like, no, you can't get that. All right, it's like it's too expensive. I showed him the Toe Point R3, which is the same sort of thing, a similar price. So you can tell when somebody likes a kind of bow. Now, while a bow like the Toe Point R3 or the Mandarin Duck Phantom aren't necessarily great bows, it's the kind of bow you want to shoot, and that is better than getting a bow that I recommend. So it's kind of like a car or a motorcycle. If you feel you want to use it, then get it. Okay? Don't let some random guy on the internet say you should buy this or shouldn't buy this. It's what you want to buy. Okay, where was I? Social engineering again. What is your technique for line the string? I line the string. I'm talking about for bow setup or for the string picture. Not sure about that one. For line the string, you use tape and you can mark the lines. There's no trick to that one really. Take-off meme. Okay, hi, if I get stiffer arrows, does the pressure plunger need to be stiffened or loosened? If you buy stiffer arrows, it's your draw weight you should change first, not your plunger button. The plunger button, in my opinion, and coaches will differ on this, in my opinion, the plunger button is for fine tuning, not for mass tuning. If you change arrows, draw weight is first. You need to have a higher draw weight. If your draw weight doesn't match your arrows, the plunger button won't do that much. I think you need to change your draw weight first. You don't need to change the plunger, but if you probably will have to, but you don't. You shouldn't be the first thing you do. Ajin Song, anything new about the difference between the wood core versus flex core in the slims? I don't know enough about that. I know Win just launched it and they're doing a marketing thing. I don't know what the differences are specifically, so I'm not in the loop there. Can't help in that question. Zedov, did you ever do Kyudo? I've answered this question before and had a very long answer. I've tried Kyudo. It's really lovely. It's not like archery. The shot, the target doesn't matter. If you want to shoot a Yumi, the Japanese bow, then buy one and shoot one. You don't have to learn a Kyudo. If you want to do Kyudo, it's more about the ceremony and the ritual and the internal process, not the shooting itself. But okay, I think we've reached the end of the Q&A. It is now 12:35. That is in 2.5 hour live stream. I'm running out of gas. I hope you have a good day for those in Australia, and for the rest of you, have a good night elsewhere. I will end the questions now. So, if you have, sorry, I'm not taking questions anymore. Maybe one more. No, I'll leave it there. Sorry, guys. I will stop the questions. Hope you enjoyed all that. And thank you for joining me for the live stream. This is the 50k Ask Me Anything live stream. We should have the 100k live stream in about February. So at this rate, so make sure you share these videos with everyone you know and get the number up. I do appreciate your following. And as usual, feel free to ask more questions either in this video or in the next one. The next Q&A live stream will be sometime December, towards like the after Christmas probably. I don't celebrate Christmas, but there'll be that gap between Christmas and New Year. We might have a bit of time then. I might do some other extra spontaneous live stream video to cover certain topics. But yeah, I'm happy to answer questions. So thank you for watching, guys. This is NUSensei, and I'll see you next time.